I'd like to call the special meeting of Newington Board of Education to order for Monday, February 12th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Deb, would you please call the roll?
Here.
Here.
Here. Sean Halloran.
Here.
Anthony Nealing.
Here.
Timothy Minton.
Here.
Sam Sharma.
Here.
Jessica Weaver.
Here.
Anastasia Yap.
Here.
Everyone's here except Mr. Nevin.
Thank you. Yeah, he'll be late. Okay, I'd like to open up to public participation on any matter related to board business. If you are in the room, you can come to the end of the table, or online, you can raise your hand to be recognized.
I thought the presentation was going to be online, and I looked for it and I couldn't find it, the slides, but I do have a question.
Well, this is public participation currently.
Oh, okay. So when do we get to participate? All right then.
But go ahead and ask your question.
Well, we'll wait.
Okay, there's no members of the public wishing to speak, so we can move on to new business. The first item is follow-up budget questions that we had at our last meeting. Go ahead, Dr. Brummett.
Thank you. All righty, I'm going to just go through some of the questions that were posed last session. I was able to get answers to most, not all, but anything that I wasn't able to get will come your way tomorrow night, and specifically the DIRG information. Some organizations collect it, but not every district reports it. So I've literally reached out to all my DIRG D colleagues to ask them to submit their last 3 years of budget increases, and I'm about halfway there. It just took a little while since it's not readily available or not consistently collected. But what I do have this evening is follow up to many of the questions that the board posed last week. First off, there was questions regarding our homeless students. Currently, we have 41 homeless students in the district, but let me clarify that. By homeless, it doesn't mean necessarily that they are living on the streets. It means that they are potentially doubled up with a relative. They might be living in a hotel, which in Newington, as we know, the Berlin Turnpike has many opportunities for hotel living, and others are in shelters. So I want to be clear about that. But here's the breakdown. 23 of our homeless students are in elementary school, 11 go to the middle school, and 7 are at the high school, for a total of 41. I will tell you, within that total, some of them are siblings. So we do have, obviously, when one member of a family is facing homeless, the entire family typically is. So budgetarily, we have to provide, the biggest expense with homeless children is the busing, because they are eligible for what's called the McKinney-Ventnor Act, which provides that they can still stay in their school of record unless the parent chooses not to, and sometimes the parent chooses not to. But if the parent chooses to, that they should stay in Newington schools, then we are required to bus them from wherever they are to Newington Public Schools. And that town, if they're not living in Newington anymore, then the town in which they're residing has to share the cost of transportation with us. And I used the example last week of Danbury. We do have a family coming in from Danbury every day. So Danbury and Newington share that cost. So that's the biggest expense. The other opportunities for homeless individuals are they get automatically qualified for free lunch, and they are automatically eligible for support with paying any fees affiliated with wherever they are in school. For example, a high school student might get their AP courses paid or prom dues paid. An elementary student might get their field trip dues paid. So that's where their benefits, if you want to call them that, come into play. We also had a discussion last week about the cost of our bus fleet versus using DATCO or First Student or any of the other establishments out there. And Dean has kept data on this year after year because it comes up. And we estimate that having our own fleet and overseeing our own bus drivers saves us between $700,000 and $800,000 per year. And that also includes the costs we avoid by doing our own maintenance where we can, and also in avoiding the increasing costs of for-profit bus contracts. So that's an important distinction between Newington buses versus DATCO. In Newington, we are just operating our buses. We're not out to make a profit. We're not, making money off of any other bus runs. For DATCO or other similar agencies, they have to turn a profit because that's their business. Here, we're just trying to serve a means to an end by getting all of our kids to school. So that's the distinction, and that's why it continues to be a cost-effective model to use our own buses. We, thanks to my colleague Seth Korn, we looked at the question that was posed last week about college graduation rates. And I'm sorry about that print being so small, but the bottom line is that, I need to blow this up for myself, actually. Newington has a better rate of students enrolling in college, staying in college, and graduating in 4 years and then in 6 years. Apparently, it's more common these days to graduate in 6 years. Are you able to read that any better than I am, Mr. Korn? I gotta blow that up. It's a percentage. So it talks about the class of 2016. And in 2016, those kids are now, 6+ years out of college, or out of high school, rather. There you go. I'm sorry, I'll view it at a higher level here. It doesn't seem to affect that. So the class of 2016 in Newington High School had about 75% of our kids enroll in college.
I think it says 78.9.
Oh, how did you get it to blow up
I
like that?
zoomed in on my meet.
Here, let me do this. All right, there we go. So of 299 reporting graduates from the class of 2016, 78.9% enrolled in college within the first year after graduation. Of that group, 90.3% persisted or kept on till their sophomore year. Within 4 years, 39.5% of those students graduated and earned a college degree. And within 6 years, 53.5% earned a college degree. That compared to the state, same year, but obviously a bigger cohort of kids, about 38,559 students graduated high school in 2016. 72.2% enrolled in college within a year of their graduation. Of those students, 88.5% persisted into their sophomore year. Within 4 years, 37.4% of those students earned a college degree, and within 6 years, 49.4% had earned a college degree. So as you can see, Newington is above the state average about how far along kids get in college and how quickly they complete college. And this is data collected by, thank you, our Navient system. I don't know if there's anything else you would add to that, Mr. Korn, about how this data is collected. I don't know if it relies on kids completing surveys or it simply is collected.
Sure. It is run by the National Student Clearinghouse, so it's a national organization that uses student identification to identify students that are enrolled in school.
So thank you very much. That's the data that we have, the most current data that we have available at this time. So we're faring better than the state, but obviously room for improvement there as kids leave us college and or career ready. All right, we did have another variety of questions to which we did prepare some memos for the board. The first question was special ed costs. There was a question whether, or the differential between students who are educated in district and students who are educated in an outplacement. I'm going to click on that memo. It's important to note that the students' educational programming is determined by the planning and placement team. So that's the group of professionals, regular ed teacher, special ed teacher, psychologist, principal, guidance counselor, depends on the level, social worker sometimes, school psychologist. They all determined collectively where that child should be educated. And that's a very comprehensive process, looking at all of the data that the child has, test data, how they're performing in school, and so on. So that is where those decisions are made. Obviously, the preference, both for our own purposes of having the kids with us, we feel we have better outcomes when they're with us, but also the quality of outplacements is something that we don't have a lot of control over. So we make those decisions very judiciously based on only the more severe students are typically programmed out of our district. But here's an analysis of some costs. Our open choice students, some of them are outplaced at the cost of about $106,000 per student. We have students who go to magnet schools, so there's also a tuition cost for that. But some of those students also receive special ed services at the magnet school, and that puts the cost even higher. So there are 32 students attending magnet schools. Their total special ed costs are about $467,000, or about $14,599 per child. Newington, through that planning and placement team process, has outplaced 42 students, and that's a cost of $5.2 million. And that, as you've heard us talk about before, that we do get some excess cost reimbursements. So this year, the sampling is, as of right now, 2/7/24, $1.2 million are expected in the excess cost offset. So our net costs are $4 million, and the average cost per student who's outplaced is about $126,000. So if you add all of those students together, 77 students are getting special ed services out of the district, and that's collectively our 3 open choice, 32 who are at magnet schools but require special ed, and 42 students that we have placed out of the district due to their educational needs. So that total outlay from the board is $4.4 million. The cost to educate the other students who remain in Newington, which is 593 students, is $7.6 million, or about $12,000 per student. So as you can see, it's far more cost effective for us to educate the children in Newington, because the cost of outplacements has gone through the roof. And as I mentioned earlier, I believe that we don't have as much quality control over the outplacements. So really, decision to have a child go other than Newington schools is a pretty significant decision, and one that we don't take lightly at all. So the total special ed budget for the district as of right now is $12,361,730. And the question at hand was, what is the differential? So about 44% of that is for out-of-district children, and 56% of that is for in-district children. So, and I think that's a summary there, that we do our best to keep the children in district. So that was a lot. That was quite a dense memo. Would I turn it back over to board chair for questions?
Ms. Weaver.
Just first want to say thank you. I think that's a pretty powerful memo. I think it really just kind of highlights the significant dichotomy between special ed and non-special ed peer costs. Just curious to clarify the cost for I guess I'm trying to just distinguish between the number of special ed costs in district differentiated from like the 593 students. It's like how many comparatively are the special ed students? Those are 593 special ed students. Is
Yes.
what I'm trying to clarify.
Which is about
Okay.
15 to 16% of our total population.
Okay, perfect. So it's 593 in-district special ed students versus the 77 out district.
Correct.
Just to clarify, and that's a significant change.
It is. And that average or that total there includes staffing, paras,
Right.
and other materials. So that's an all-inclusive amount of money. It's a little deceptive to call the 32 magnet kids out of district place because they were going to be at a magnet school anyway, but it's still our responsibility to provide or pay for, rather, they provide it typically, their special ed services while they're in a magnet school.
So that was, yeah, just my follow-up question, was on the magnet school front. Those are just specifically the special ed costs for the magnet.
Correct.
Not the actual magnet school tuition.
That's a
we're paying.
separate, a separate line item that we talked about
That's what I
last time.
thought. Okay.
So this is above and beyond that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this memo from the board? I just have a confirmation, I guess, and there's obviously a significant cost associated with the outplacement, so those 42 students. Is their evaluations done every year, every semester, just to make sure they're in the right spot and cost-wise?
Yes. Well, we do we monitor students in special ed as much, if not more, than regular education students. We're required every 3 years to do a thorough reevaluation, and at that time, we are supposed to determine if they're still eligible for special ed. But above and beyond all of that, we meet no less than once a year, typically more than that, to look at their programs, determine if it's still appropriate, with an eye toward, do they still need it? So there are times throughout every school year where students both become eligible for special ed or exit special ed. So it's a ongoing process that can change throughout the school year.
Sorry, that just prompted a question. Maybe this is for you, Dr. Burma or Marlena, but I'm just curious too, and maybe not the answer you would have, but just kind of like the number of companies that provide these things. And there's, I assume, no really regulation on how much they can charge. So we're at will. It's kind of, I won't say a monopoly on the market here, but this is just confirming that we don't necessarily have control and there's no regulations to say, these are for profit.
They are, some of them, they all have to make a profit so they
Right.
can stay in business, but many of them do fundraisers as well. You know, they're at the mercy of some of the same things we are. Special ed teachers are hard to come by, so they're hiring them at the top step. Paras are hard to come by, so they're hiring them at a top step. And related service providers are hard to come by. But the state, I would say loosely, with a real emphasis on the term loosely, oversees them. Even if they're called state approved, we find that the state doesn't go out to visit them very often. So we have to be critical consumers of where the students go. And, you know, we get to know these schools and, have a sense of who does a better job. The other real challenge is, these places have staffing shortages, so they have fewer seats to offer. So that makes it a little more competitive. So there are a lot of considerations in how we select where a student might go, plus parents have a say in the matter. So they can visit different places and help us determine what might be the best fit for their child.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharma? You're on mute.
Yeah, I just got a quick question on the outplacements. What is the threshold amount of expense beyond which the state basically, we get the grant from the state for the excess cost? Is there like a threshold amount that you need to spend on each student?
Yes, the threshold is 4.5 times the regular per pupil cost. So if Newington's per pupil cost is $19,000, it's $19,000 times 4.5. And whatever that number is, anything above that, the state is supposed to reimburse us. As mentioned last week, because the excess cost grant is not fully funded, that overage that we calculate, and our special ed office maintains a running record of that, is often reimbursed at the 70% level versus the 100% level. So really, we don't get back as much money as we should. Lou budgets very carefully, so that money that you see projected for this year, he does budget at that lower percentage because he knows year after year, we tend to get a much lower reimbursement rate than what is promised. And as mentioned last time, and I'll mention it tonight again, my organization, specifically CAPS, we will be testifying on Thursday to advocate for appropriate levels of funding for excess cost, because right now it's underfunded.
Just one more question. Any of those outplacements, are those all Newington students or are any open choice students in those 42?
The 3 at the top are open choice, the 42 are Newington.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Yap?
Hi, Dr. Bremer, I just wanted to kind of ask a question and make a statement. Are we paying for any of those evaluations? I know with special education kids, sometimes an evaluation just by the school isn't enough. How much are we paying for evaluations done by outside providers for students to then be like either outplaced or, because I know doctors can do evaluations as well. So I know that Newington kind of sometimes pays for that. How much have we paid in that total?
I'd have to run a separate report for that because that varies widely. Some places, it's part of the tuition cost that you pay. In other places, it's a la carte. So if the child does need in-depth evaluations beyond what we've already submitted, there could be an extra charge. So that we'd have to calculate with maybe some analysis by our special ed department. I wouldn't even venture a guess on what that was. Probably not a substantial amount of money, but something I'd have to get a little more analysis to do to come
Okay,
up with a good
thank you.
answer. No
Thank you.
problem.
Do you have additional?
I do.
That's okay.
The next area that the board raised was 504, which, just give me a second to get there. So 504, as we mentioned the other evening, is a requirement under federal law that provides students with a disability may be entitled to services and accommodations under what's called a 504 plan. Ironically, this initially was a law that was meant to provide accommodations for people in the workforce. It eventually trickled down into the world of education, as things often do. So in our district, and it's something that we get no reimbursement money for at all, there's no funding affiliated with it, it's considered part of your regular education program. The chart that's being displayed right now shows the variety of students we have in the district who have 504 plans. Most are students with ADHD, but it runs the gamut of autism, emotional issues, physical limitations, hearing impairments, diabetes, vision impairments. Unfortunately, the bottom box is blocked, but I'll get that total for you in a second. So these are the breadth of students that are eligible for a 504 plan. It looks like it's 280 students. So, and that, again, for the most part, is just accommodations made in the regular education classroom, but there can be other expenses involved. For example, we do have to provide for FM systems for students who are hearing impaired. And that's not their hearing aids, but it's the system that the teacher uses so that the students with a hearing aid have increased hearing capacity. So we're responsible for either renting those or paying for those. Some of our 504 students get special busing for a variety of reasons. Some of them just need extra nursing services. For example, our diabetic students need to go to the nurse more often or have monitoring associated with their blood sugar levels. So all of these have some cost. And Lou, could you speak to how you came up with the estimated cost for 504?
Can you just scroll down to the question?
Put your mic on.
Sure. Oh, sorry.
Dave, can you?
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it. It's my computer's acting up. There you go. Okay. So there's the narrative below.
Okay. What the mainstream of all this is for the 280 kids that are there is they have a 504 plan, which is typically not anything that requires day-to-day intervention like you would say in the special education world where there is a paraprofessional at the hip of a student, or they're going to get speech services every Tuesday for 45 minutes, all that sort of direct service arrangement. Most of these are just accommodations that are requested of the teaching environment. So if a teacher needs to provide more time for a student on task or homework assignments or time to take a test, that is what the accommodation would be. Similarly, you have situations where there needs to be medication administered for the diabetes or whatever affliction students have. So they detour to the nurse 5-10 minutes, whatever it takes for them to get it, and then they're on their way again. So there's very little of those situations where you actually, are providing a service with direct cash outlay associated with it. You will have a little bit of that with transportation arrangements. When a football players breaks their leg in a game, they're in a heavy walking cast. They can't really walk to school. They don't drive. So transportation will be given to them for 4 to 6 weeks. So there will be a direct outlay associated with that, but it's not much. Really, the costs that are incurred are for the individual administering that student's individual plan, which many times is the nurse administrator for us, or if it is an individual that's a speech person for somebody who's hearing impaired, they have to do the report and really just monitor progress against it. So it's not a complex report, not a report that really is any more than just embedded in the fabric of the day. Okay, I have this kid coming up this week. I need to put 10 minutes aside to get it done within their job responsibilities, and they just go on their way. There was one other one that was the actual direct outlay, you could say, at one level is for the nurse administrator, because all 280 cases will ultimately find their way through the nurse administrator's office. And you could say that roughly 25% to 1/3 of the nurse administrator's time, is directly supporting all these ADA accommodations as part of it. So you could say it's $30,000 to $40,000 of our costs, but there really isn't a situation where you can kind of like pull away a position and, it's very modular. This is all integrated in the school day with everybody, and you don't have those big chunks of money like you do with outplacements or heavy duty student support for emotional behavioral issues.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going.
Ms. Beatrice has a question.
Just a quick question about homebound students. Are there costs associated with having teachers or staff go to the home, maybe after hours, or how do we
Yeah.
provide
Homebound
services for the
Yes,
homebound kids?
That's by the hour, by the number of students. If it's a homebound situation, it'll be typically one-on-one. If it's getting together and there's one tutor working with 3 people at the library after school hours, there'll be a different rate structure for that. But there is direct costs associated with that. There is a separate program in the budget just for homebound costs there.
Clarify, that sounds like it's few and far between and a separate item from what we're looking at right here.
A little more than a few and far between, but it's definitely separate.
Thanks for this breakdown. I think it's great. I just kind of wanted to not go over, I think the top one, just if you scroll up, just kind of, if anyone could speak to, it's clear that there is a significant portion on emotional health, and I'm just wondering if that's an increase. I'm not sure how much we're tracking year to year, but just wondering if that is impacting any of the cost, and I just assume that there's an increase in those
Well,
plans
it's
since.
a two-way cost decision for the district.
Mhm.
I can't speak to exactly how many and who goes
Yep.
based on what referral there is here, but you have been sponsoring the ESS program for 5 or 6
Mhm.
years now, starting at the high school and then going down to the middle schools. Those kids are, I would say, at higher risk to, have more significant educational support needs or ultimately be forced into an outplacement situation. If the program is able to let us keep the kids in district, we're doing it at about $13,000 a student to do that, compared to pick a big number starting in sixth grade.
That was kind of my point. Yeah. So with the ESS program, are those students captured in that number, I guess?
I'm sorry.
Those students getting ESS, are those captured in this number, kind of?
They might be.
They might be or not. It's not
Correct.
necessarily.
Some may be.
Okay.
The nurse administrator for,
Okay.
summary numbers. just to
Right,
give us
right,
an
right.
Idea of what the whole program, I can't speak.
Understood. My point more was just if we're seeing this
Yes.
increase.
And I would say the answer to that is a
Yeah.
resounding yes. All of our mental health providers at all of our schools are busy 24/7.
Thank you.
Okay, there was a question about our speech and language services. There is, our special director should be on the line, and she looked at the current protocols for any limitations to speech and language pathology caseloads, and she could not find any. So what we've prepared, or what she has prepared here, are the caseloads by school. And going across the chart as I scroll down, the SLP is the speech and language pathologist, that's their name, and the school location, and how many students they serve directly on their caseload. And sometimes they serve kids through what's called an RTI group, where it's, again, not an identified child, but someone that's getting perhaps some remedial services so they don't become in need of special education. And sometimes they do provide services on a 504 plan. In the case of E Green, it's 36 kids altogether for those purposes. Some of our speech pathologists split between schools. So the next individual is at Martin Kellogg and Patterson. You can see at the two schools, between the two schools, she serves about 40 students, or 41 students, because she has one on consult. Consult basically is they go and check in with the teachers, whether it's regular ed or special ed, to see how the child's doing and offer strategies, but they don't work directly with the child. Then we look at our speech pathologist at Chafee, 41 students on her caseload, direct service 2, she serves as RTI or remedial, and that's a total of 43 students. And middle school, we have an individual that serves a few students at Chafee and most of her caseloads at Wallace. With some on a consult, which the consult model becomes more prevalent as the students age, because the needs decrease over time. So this individual has 42 kids on our caseload, including those consults. We also have an individual that serves NHS and the Transition Academy. You'll note that we cover the NHS and the Transition Academy with a 0.5 speech pathologist, because again, at this age, the needs become far reduced, because this is something that developmentally kids can recover from as they age, and the speech pathology interventions work. So she has 24 kids on her caseload. And then we have someone that serves Anna Reynolds, as well as some of our itinerant pre-K. These are kids that aren't in part of any of our pre-K programs, but come in just for speech. So she has 40 children. And then our Patterson speech pathologist, who has a lot of students in our pre-K program, so it's 32 plus. Why it says plus is because that's an ongoing referral source. Once kids turn 3, we have to look at them to see if they're eligible for special ed, if they've been getting birth to 3 services. So those students come into our district on a rolling basis throughout the school year as they turn 3. So that's why that caseload evolves. And last but not least, there's another speech pathologist at Patterson, and she deals with the children K to 4, and she has 47 students on her caseload. So we have 7.5 speech pathologists, and they serve, collectively serve all the children in the district. I think there was a question last time about, do we ever not serve kids because we don't have enough staff? And the answer to that is no. We do have to serve any child who has a plan or an IEP where they are mandated to have speech pathology services. That's determined by the PPT, and the amount and duration of that is a team decision. And we would always serve a student, regardless of how busy our caseloads are. And sometimes, on occasion, someone who's, these numbers may also not include someone that might periodically go to a different school to help out if there ever were an imbalance in caseloads. But that's our current profile and speech language numbers. So I don't know if there are any questions about that.
There is Miss Yap.
Hi, I have a question. What do our caseloads look like compared to other districts, speech pathologist caseloads? And I know one of the positions that we weren't going to be able to either fill or add was just going to take a look at that really quick. I think it was a speech pathologist. It said one.
Yes.
Do you think that our caseloads are similar to other districts? I mean, pre-pandemic, we're not including the pandemic, and wouldn't allowing an additional speech pathologist help lighten the caseloads and maybe give students maybe more time with a speech pathologist? I do have a speech delayed son myself, and I know that it was very hard to get a certain amount of time. Of course, every student serviced, but not having so many students, sometimes I feel like limited the amount of time, the children could get. So, can we look at what other DERG speech pathologist caseloads look like? And number two, if there's any way, I know that the speech pathologist was not in the proposed budget, but I would say that with the caseloads I'm looking at, maybe we could possibly add that back in there, if that's possible.
Marilyn, are you on the line?
I am.
Would you be able to comment on our current caseloads? I know you looked at it kind of in a state mandated way, but are our caseloads on par with other districts? Anything that you might want, or would you like more time to do a little more research on that?
Yeah, I could not speak to what, and I apologize. Thank you for letting me be virtual. I am battling that cold that keeps going around and just doesn't want to give up. So thank you again for letting me be here virtually. But I cannot speak to the other numbers in other districts. We can absolutely look into that, Anastasia, and get that information for you. But I do think that our numbers are comparable. We have looked at our numbers pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and we are not much higher than we were. I think what we are seeing is the needs of our students are changing. So I do think that numbers only tell one part of the story, because we know that a student maybe who has an articulation issue might be seen for 5-6 minutes a day, because you're not going to work on articulation for more than that, where you have a student who has a significant language disability who might be needing to be seen 2 or 3 hours a week. So sometimes our numbers don't just tell the story. There's children behind those stories. But if you would like us to look into numbers in our DERG, we absolutely can do that.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Next item. All right. Last but not least there was a question posed the other evening about shared services. And again, there is, I believe, still a committee identified for that purpose on the town side that over time, myself and other members of the Board of Education have participated in. It has been inactive probably for almost 3 years. But above and beyond that, we do have a lot of things that we do share with the town. We are both participants in Lockton and Kerma for different insurance programs. Whenever we make purchasing agreements, we work with the town on that. As many know, last year we engaged in a solar panel project collaboratively with the town and have solar panels either fully or almost fully operational at all but Anna Reynolds right now. Is there anyone else that doesn't have solar?
John Patterson doesn't have it right now.
Still not active on Jan? Okay. But that's definitely in the works, and actually Anna Reynolds is due to go online once they finish construction. We have collaborations with Parks and Grounds. They assist with our snow removal. Our Parks and Rec does a lot of shared services with us. For example, They are allowing us to use the gymnasium for alternative program. They use our athletic program uses some of their facilities as needed. Clem Lemire is a place where we have athletic contests or practices. We also, today, or over the course of the next few days, Bill DeMayo uses some of our school buses for some of the programs that he's running. So those are all kind of in-kind services. We are often share custodial services with the town, especially here at the town hall. And I already mentioned busing. We help with police matters sometimes, practices for police officers. The buses are used to block traffic sometimes for different purposes. And so all of those things are things the town and the board collaboratively share. The one thing that you won't see on there necessarily is a person. There isn't any people at this point that are, do both sides. Our board staff collaborate with town staff. Our Craig does collaborate with our town technology director. Obviously, Lou collaborates with the town finance director. I collaborate with the town manager. So those relationships are there, but in terms of a financial arrangement, they're not there other than the in-kind services that I mentioned. That probably, to go further than that, would probably be the work of that shared services committee. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the DIRG information was not readily available, but I am collecting it from my DIRG-D colleagues, and I should be able to give you a fairly comprehensive report tomorrow night. And that concludes the questions as I recall them, unless I missed any.
I don't believe you did. Are there any last minute questions on these before we get into our next agenda item? No. Okay.
All right, so now, I keep doing that. Now we're going to get into the budget book. So there, I've asked Wendy Krause to give us an overview about how to read and interpret the pages. What you'll notice, and there are some guidelines I kind of want to have folks think about as they're hearing all the program updates. First and foremost is we did spend every last dime of last year's budget to the extent that it was expended 100%, and we had to dip into the non-lapsing fund. I believe it was just a hair under $50,000. It's important to know that we could have had to access the non-lapsing fund to a greater degree last year, but two factors came into play. One, I put a spending freeze in play in January, like I did this year. And two, the open choice monies came in last year late in the game and at a higher level than we thought. So some of those monies helped us not have to dip into the non-lapsing fund as much. We won't be as fortunate this year. It's important too, the term buy-aheads you'll hear tonight, because if we did use some of that open choice grant money last year to do some buy-aheads, you'll see that it makes this year's budget request higher, because now you're backfilling what we didn't spend last year and then what we need for this year. We'll explain that as you see that in the budget. But those are the things I wanted to clarify in terms of how to read the budget. We don't have a buy-ahead program, but what we do is if we have realized savings, either through a grant, and that's probably all it would be this year, is through a grant, if at all, we would use some of that money to buy things that we could not buy in the budget, or things that got cut out from the budget because we wanted to keep our ask lower. So again, you're going to hear us repeat that tonight. We've also asked program managers, many who are sitting around the table tonight that you're going to hear from momentarily, to really highlight any significant deviations from last year, where there's significant increases or where there's significant decreases. If they're largely asking for the same, or the same with a small cost of living or inflationary consideration, then we didn't ask them to spend a lot of time on that. Doesn't preclude you from asking more about that, but I did want to clarify that we spent every last dime of last year's budget and then some. Okay, so now I'll turn it over to Wendy for an even better explanation of these budget books, because she and Kristen and Lou and Karen and Steve too, put these things together with tremendous detail, for which I am very appreciative.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to have you turn to the first green tab that says art. That will be the first program that Seth Korn will go over, but I'll just walk you through. Every program is set up the same way, so I'm just going to give you an overview of how it breaks down. We will be asking tonight for you to jump around a little bit in the budget book, and that will help so that like Seth can get his 2 programs done and not stay on. So we'll be helping you navigating the colored tabs as we go. So when you open to that art tab, you'll see the front page provides a very high-level overview of the 5 big categories. Those are the object expenditure classifications. And then across the columns, you'll see that the first column is what was appropriated in the 2023-24 budget. That's actual numbers. The next column shows you what was requested to the superintendent. So that means that staff members, teachers would have been asking for things, but it then goes through their principals and coordinators, and then it goes up to the superintendent ask. The next column after that is what Dr. Brummett is now proposing. So you might see a difference there if there's been anything cut at the superintendent level. And of course, the final column is what you will determine. Then if you turn the page, the next page we call the left-hand budget page. That gives you just an overview of the program, the major goals and the description of the program. And then underneath that, there's 2 categories where you'll see program improvements and changes. Those are things that were actually included in the request in this budget to improve the program. If you see nothing there, it means the program is basically maintaining as it has been. The next category is program needs. Those are things that may have been either cut from the budget asked for this year, or somebody is predicting this is coming up and they're giving you a heads up, you're going to see this in the future, but it's not included in this year's budget. Then we go over to the what we call the right-hand budget pages now, because they're lengthy, maybe 3 pages. And then you'll see those are the first thing you'll see down the side is those big categories that we just looked at, your 100, 400, 500. But now it gets broken down even further. So if you go down to the 500, there's a good example where you'll see that is broken down into 581, which is travel, and 599, which is contracted services. So we're getting more detailed. And then you'll also see that these pages, if you go to 600, you'll see that these are broken down now by school. And you, Karen showed you last week how those numbers break down, but I'll give you a quick reminder. The first 4 are the elementary schools. So 02 is Elizabeth Green, 04 is Anna Reynolds, 05 is Chafee, 06 is Patterson, 10 is Kellogg, 11 is Wallace. So those are your 2 middle schools, and then 20 is the high school. So when you look across the schools, it gives you a nice overview, but we wouldn't expect those numbers to be exactly the same. The schools are different sizes, so a lot of items are based on enrollment, but things are also based on need. These are school-based budgets. So even when we look at workbooks, for example, some schools might have a stockpile, they've added up what they have and they're only asking for what they need. So you wouldn't expect, even when they're ordering the exact same items, that would be exactly the same. We also have schools that might, gym equipment is a good example where one school needs to replace mats. That doesn't mean everybody's getting new mats. So that's why you'll see deviations there. That continues on to the next page. And then the last page over on the right-hand side where it says art program account details. This is a page we added to the budget a few years ago to help you understand what's included in each of these categories. So you'll see the salaries are all up at the top. And then we give you examples of what's included, say in contracted services, what kinds of supplies are included. And then underneath that, we've shown you how much the superintendent cut at this level and what things might have been cut if it's specific. Sometimes you'll see one major item was cut. In this case of art, there's just a lot of consumables in the art program. So just various supplies were cut off the top. And then lastly, at the bottom of that page, that's where Dr. Brummett was referring to, where we asked people to note the significant changes from last year. So again, significant meaning not if it's just an adjustment because of costs, more so if something has shifted. And that's where you'll also see those realized savings that Dr. Brummett was referring to that might account for some of the main differences you see. And then if there were any grant allocations in that area, you'll see it listed here as well, so that you know that there's a partial funding from a grant in there.
And I'll just add to that. So tonight and tomorrow, we're gonna go through each of the tabs. So if the board has questions on specifically what's in there or questions on the program itself, they can be asked and answered. We won't go through cutting or adding or any of that. So once we start our deliberation, we have to adopt the budget as ours, and then we can make changes to it. So right now, it's just an informational and clarification workshop, and then later we'll get to the adding and cutting and that discussion. Okay, so looks like Mr. Korn, you're up.
Mr. Korn, Seth Korn is our Director of Counseling and Assessment, and he also has his hand in the art world. I'll kick it over to you, Mr. Korn.
Yes, so my name is Seth Korn. I'm the Director of School Counseling and Student Testing K through 12. I also oversee the art program. So the art program is offered to all students at Newington Public Schools that allow students to have exposure in various types of media, such as clay, painting, drawing, digital graphics, and design, just to name a few. The high school program offers a variety of courses to meet the needs of a diverse student population. Among those courses, we offer a portfolio prep class, AP Studio Art, and next year, the potential to offer a new UConn Early College Experience course in Drawing 2. So for the 2024-2025 school year, the art department program is requesting $48,418, most of which is for consumable art supplies, which has increased due to rising costs. Thank you.
Ms. Weaver.
Mr. Korn, great to see you.
Hello.
Just a quick question. Do we have different, I'm just assuming for 100 in certified salaries, the breakdown I think is one teacher at every school, except the high school would be 3, is my guess, for a total of 9 FTE, if I'm doing math right. Just because it goes, some of the increases in the salaries, just curious if they're at different steps, would explain that. Kind of like different.
I can just jump in to clarify that is not the case. Actually, at the elementary level, there are 3 art teachers
Okay.
shared across 4 schools. So that's why
Okay.
you see the difference there.
The differentiation between like how we did that out. Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
And they would be at a wide range of steps, with some at the top and some younger early career.
Thank you.
That's art. Now we're going to talk about school counseling.
All right, so you're going to go to the 3rd blue tab in your book. Right. So the mission of the school counseling department is to deliver a comprehensive school counseling program that provides all students with the opportunity to gain an understanding of self and others. The Newington Comprehensive School Counseling Program is aligned with a state framework and national standards. State legislation requires school counselors to work with all students in grades 6 through 12 to develop individual student success plans that concentrate in the 3 domains of academic, career, and personal social. Newington School District student success plans are also integrated in 5th grade. So for the 2024-2025 school year, the school counseling program is requesting $11,384, most of which is for our contracted services such as School Links, which will be our new college and career platform that is replacing Naviance next year. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for school counseling department?
I might want to just add on that account detail page. You can see there is the grant allocation in this department of $112,889. That's for the our mental health position. So as we go through the evening, you'll see where grant offsets apply to these departments. That's under 2120 account details. I think it's the last page
And-
of that.
And just to clarify, that 112,000 is not included in, it's included in the department, but it's not included in the numbers that are on the budget sheet.
Is that accurate, Lou? Mr. Jacomowitz?
112,000 again, where?
The grant allocation.
How was the grant offset reflected in the previous pages?
This is for the counselor,
Yes.
in the, counseling program. So just shove in, certified salaries of $1,194. The actually is $112,000 more offset by that.
So it's taken out of that number based on the grant allocation.
304.
Thank you.
All right.
Looks like we have a couple questions, Mr. Halloran.
I'm assuming it's not in the current budget, but the exploration of counselors at the elementary level, when do we expect to have that? What does that look like, I guess?
It is not, unfortunately. I'm a big proponent in having school counselors at the elementary level. I think it would provide us an opportunity to be more responsive to our students at the elementary level and their mental health and support. However, talking with elementary principals, it would be beneficial to have one at each school, which would be an additional 4 FTE, which is something that I think would be a big ask for this board.
I agree, 4 FTE is a big ask. However, we just saw that 77 students in their special ed are under emotional issues. So I think that happens at the elementary level. I think 4 FTE is a lot, but I think it's something I'd be more interested in hearing, just kind of what the options might be.
More than happy to have that conversation.
Ms. Weaver and then Ms. Yap.
Just a quick question, clarifying, there's no less memberships, it's just where I see the memberships go down, right? Are we,
I'm sorry, Ms. Weaver, I
are
couldn't
there
hear
no
that.
less memberships? Like, I think we're not missing any. It's just, it's rare for memberships to go down, so,
Yes, there is one membership. I don't have it off the
Okay.
top of my head that
but we're
are
not like losing any, you're okay with it? We're good?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
just making sure.
Ms. Yap?
Hi, yeah, I'm just gonna piggyback off what Sean said, and maybe just throw this out there. Yes, I know 4 FT would be a huge ask. Sorry, but is there any way that we'd be able to, and it's just a thin stretch, share some of those professionals with elementary school kids? I mean, having a special needs child myself, I know early intervention is key. So is that something that we've ever considered as well? Just maybe having some of the other counselors maybe start or pilot a program that could possibly work with the younger students?
Let me respond.
I'll
I'm gonna-
go ahead, Wendy.
I was just gonna, I'll tie that into something I was gonna add as well. Have we done that? No, the school counselors at the middle and high school level have a pretty large responsibility right now. However, I did want to give a historical perspective too, that a few years back, as long as Kristen's been at central office, I don't have the year in my head, we did look at adding more support at the elementary level, and the decision at the time was to add social workers. So we had originally had 2 social workers, we added and shared them between the 4 schools, and then we went to 4 social workers. And talking with the staff at the elementary level, they felt like that was going to meet the need more so than the role of a counselor at that time. So just to give that perspective, that's kind of how so we have a full-time school social worker and a school psychologist at each elementary school.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, sorry, Brittany.
I just wanted to clarify, so we have 14 school counselors between the 3 schools right now, correct? And then we also have the school I know we didn't touch it yet, school psychologists, social workers, and then where did the behavioral specialists fall under?
Okay. Looks like you're done. Thank you, Mr. Korn.
So we have Educational technology, Jay is online. He's got the same cold as everybody else. And Mr. Holland's available as well. There he is. Mr. Salerno.
Hello, everyone. I think Craig's going to start. Ignore my hoarse voice, and then I'll chime in.
Sorry. Good evening and keep feeling better, Jay. I know you're struggling at home there. So I'll do my best to quickly highlight for you following the same guidelines or not guidelines, the structure of the book as has been introduced to you all tonight. Some of the main goals of the educational technology program are to provide the necessary supports to ensure the digital equity for all students. This increases the opportunities for all staff to develop and use technology for their instruction and for student learning, as well as to improve communication or to look to improve communication tools to better support the community and to provide more variety for languages spoken at home. In particular, that references to the Parent Square product that we introduced last year and have expanded the use of this year to help with communication to and from the home. So when announcements need to be sent home, we can reach the families in the language that they may be speaking within their household. Been a huge improvement to the services that we've offered, and we've had great feedback, I believe, to date on that great product. Overall, some of the major goals for the program.
I'm just going to direct folks to the first yellow tab for educational technology.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I left the most important piece out. I apologize.
That's why we work as a team.
When you look to our budget this year, there is a small increase. I'd say, well, not small, but in general, it's pretty good. We're looking at about $100,000 overall. I'll go into the details in just a moment. The funds will be used, the improvements that we have coming in the program. The hardware and replacement for student devices and staff devices is not going to be found in your operating budget. So those improvements will be carried and taken care of through the capital improvement project. And we highlighted that for you on the left-hand page there. And in the future, there is a request and a need to do some expansion of our Wi-Fi program outside the buildings so that when folks are having emergencies or we need to address them in a crisis type of event, they can use the technology resources provided or their own devices to help with communication. So to highlight those increases that we do have in our budget, again, using the numbers on the right-hand pages there, in repairs, we have an increase of about $10,000. We've been working very hard to extend the life of our computer devices to try to manage our budget better, and the cost of repairs, since devices are being held onto for more years now, obviously has an increase. So we have a small increase there to keep parts and replacement components on hand. Contracted services, that's in the 500 program there. Increases there are roughly $99,000. Most of those are related to Parent Square and the renewal of our wireless instructional presentation tools in the classrooms. So we have that fully outfitted at Anna Reynolds, and we're rolling out more and more of those classrooms this year across the district as a goal for the final for June. Additional instructional services have been added, such as quizzes that's used for online assessments at the middle and high school. Math type is an expansion. Again, it's a multi-year renewal for a few $1,000s to support the transition for the math program as the district has moved deeper into the Google Workspace. And lesson picks, I think, was an expansion of license seats, correct, Jay, that one? That's a small $600 component there.
Yes. Yep.
Yep, and overall, there's just some miscellaneous price increases, as Dr. Brummett alluded to, across the different products with inflation. Supplies has a small increase of $5,800. That's for mice, headphones, and instructional materials to support educational technology at the middle and high school. And that's it for our increases. Are there any questions, elements that I didn't highlight?
Mr. Halloran.
Couple of questions as it relates to hardware. I know we're trying to expand the lifespan, especially with the Chromebooks and the equipment that's going out. How long are we trying to expand that out? Like, what's the useful lifespan of a brand new Chromebook? 3 years?
The useful life is about 3 years.
Okay.
We're already stretching that at 4, and we do that at the middle and high school level at 4 years. Elementary, the kids have historically taken better care of the devices, so we felt and have been able to for a while to kind of get 5 out of that. But maybe it's the manufacturing, maybe them cutting costs, but we are seeing that 3 years is a very difficult time. As we go past that, it's been very difficult. And we have some very large expenses that we're trying to address this year to recalibrate how we're handling that.
And then not even just use and abuse, just compatibility with new software. Uh, I think sometimes you just have a computer that's too old to run the new stuff.
Sometimes, yep. Sometimes there are some compatibility issues. Google has extended their operating system support, but they've extended it beyond the hardware useful life cycle. So where they say the operating systems will be supported for 6 years on a piece of equipment, it's unlikely the equipment will last those 6 years.
And my second question, the cost estimates for the hardware, are those estimates or have those going out for bid?
Those are very close to actuals,
Okay,
based on history that we've had. And that does include the services necessary to bring that device all the way into the district. It's not just the device. It may be some services for enrollment, services for asset tagging, things like that.
Just a question about the Wi-Fi project. Was it kind of like set to go? Or are
No,
we
it has
thinking-
never,
okay.
it was not all the way to a shovel-ready project, unfortunately, not yet. No, with the evolution of wireless technology, we do have to have some experts come out and kind of recalibrate and reanalyze the locations where we have student gathering and look to see what solution will fit us best based
So,
on.
okay, not in this budget, but potential plans for proposal next year, is that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If I'm answering that correctly. So it's not in the fiscal ask. If I can make it, if I can squeeze some out of any CIP or anything that we can make happen next year, we'll begin to pick away at it. Or God willing, we'll go for a bigger nut if we can.
Okay.
Looks like we're good to move on.
Awesome. Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Great job, Craig.
The voice from beyond. Mr. Salerno, are you ready for career and tech education?
Yeah, I will spit it out and it won't be a big ask either. So I also, well, first of all, my name is Jay Salerno. I'm the Director of Educational Technology, but I also oversee the CTE department at the high school. And the CTE department's main focus is to provide academy programs for our kids, culinary and hospitality, finance and business management, information technology and digital creation, medical sciences, and aerospace and engineering. Most of our budget is funded by the Perkins grant of $49,000. The only things that we cannot put into the Perkins grants is our consumables for our foundation classes in the culinary program. So our ask this year goes up just a little bit to $30,000 based on inflation. Our other ask is $10,000 for our Distributed Education Clubs of America, which includes our memberships, our competitions, and our offset the travel costs for our students.
This is the first blue tab in your book,
Oh, yeah,
CTE.
sorry. My book's not at home, Maureen. I apologize.
Talk about it later, Jay.
My pages are.
No, it's questions.
Mr. Holler.
Sorry, it's the budget. I'm gonna have lots of questions on like everything. In terms of the 10,000 for DECA funding, how many DECA events do we typically do a year?
I want to say at least 4. Some of the events are national events. So the kids, I think, just got back from Texas earlier this year in Florida. So at least it's 4, but there's also local competitions too.
Thank you.
Beatrice?
I also have a question about the DECA dues and fees. Are parents responsible for any of that, or does it come fully from the budget?
No, they are responsible for some. And so we just try to offset some of the costs.
Okay, it looks like you're all set. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Feel better.
Feel better, Jay. Okay, we are now ready to roll into student activities, non-athletic with Mr. Myers.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Myers. I'm the Director of Athletics and Student Activities. If you could go to your second brown tab, we'll talk about the color choice next year.
Good job.
The first grouping we'll talk about is the non-athletic connection, and And more or less what these are opportunities to engage our students who might not be sports folks, might not be musical folks, but may have just, interests. And it's a way for us to engage with those students and keep them connected to our student body and other students around the areas. So if you look, there is a clean description of each one of the programs on the left-hand page, which just explains, at the elementary level, what they look like, and then at the middle and high school. Obviously, as you go to the middle and high school level, the programs do get a little elevated, and there's more opportunities for our students as they become more independent and free. So as you transition onto, the budget pages, you'll notice they're relatively consistent, and that's because these are mostly negotiated spots. And you'll see obviously just slight jumps, and those are just based on salary increase or stipend increases, I should say. You have fewer opportunities at the elementary level just because of the independence, and then it grows as you get to the high school. And just to give an idea of what some of these things look like, they go anywhere from student government to table tennis club to, FBLA to robotics club. They're, the different engagements, the different levels of student involvement range drastically. But the goal is to connect however we can. And we've seen over the years, some clubs, depending on the type of club, some clubs will come and some clubs will go based on student interest. When we ask the students to kind of create their own presentations and bring them to the school leadership to kind of add those. If you look down at the supplies line, those are just a few dollars that we've put into the budget so that if a club's an upstart or if they have an event that they would like to partake in, they can go to the school principals and request, a few dollars to support the program. It might just be a few dollars. Maybe it's a Spanish club for a quick meal or something along those lines. But that's where those dollars come from. So it's very controlled, but they do offer great opportunities for our students to stay connected to our school communities. Any questions?
Mr. Newton?
Yes. Question, what is the percentage increase from the 171? It's $4,700. What percentage is that? You have any idea?
It's whatever's in the
Based on
negotiation of the
contracts?
contract. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just curious. I know we've been getting a lot of more, newer clubs. I feel like we've increased. Are we seeing maybe the usage of this more and more as we see more and more clubs come into play? I mean, I know some roll off, some it ebbs and flows, but.
Correctly. I mean, really, that's what you really see. You really see an up and down.
Okay.
Some will come on board and some will depart. A lot of times it's based on what you might have a heavy connection of seniors, right? Or maybe as they're sophomores or juniors, they'll begin a club, they'll get very invested. And once that core group moves on, it might dissipate. But it's amazing as you see there's another connection, there's another interest, there's something else. We had a trivia club come on board because you had some students that connected with the teacher and they wanted to offer that up. So these are things that they do come and go. We up to date, we've never had to deny somebody or deny a group an opportunity, which I think is wonderful. So we've really been able to meet the needs of our students.
And just for clarification, for the public, it's not like these funds wouldn't go to use. Like these are allocated based on our union contract. So it's not like where it's just random dollars. Yeah.
Correct. They're for advisors,
What is that percentage this year
It's
for the union contract? Is it 2.5, 3, 3.25?
It's 4.
It's 4 across the salary schedule. For these particular ones, it went up a little differently, but approximately this.
Yeah. These are stipends,
You
not.
only requested 2.75 more, so that isn't too bad.
Right.
Yeah. If there aren't any further questions, we'll go on to the next tab, which will be our athletics student activities. Our athletic program is robust. We offer every high school CIC sponsored sport. We have obviously multiple levels of freshman, JV, and varsity that span across 3 seasons. We participate in the CCC, which is the largest conference in the state. And we do offer our student athletes the highest level of competition we can provide. As you see at the bottom, there is a pay to participate, which covers, more or less our officials' fees, and other costs that are affiliated with our athletic program. It's $100 for each season. It caps off at $200. So if you're a 3-sport athlete, your third sport would be free. And then there is just one caveat, which is ice hockey because of additional rental space. So that fee is a little higher, at $550. But I think if you ask most hockey parents, that's a pretty good discount, to have a student athlete, participate for over 3 months, in that particular sport, just based on the additional costs that go with it. Most of our budget is pretty straightforward. We're going to request the items that our student athletes need to perform and need to, participate. We do have booster clubs that support some of our programs, and more or less what they fundraise for and what they raise funds for are the things that go above and beyond. Might be team apparel, might be, an additional opportunity. During the season, some of our programs will, go to events, and they might defer some cost for that. Senior night, opportunities. But the things that you will see in front of you are the things that we need to manage our programs. You will see, if you look at the cost increases, one of the major costs come from, and those of you who were here last year, our athletic training fees have jumped. And you'll see some of that cost will be reflected in that salaries piece. Unfortunately, athletic trainer fees are raising. So this is to kind of meet that demand. So what you'll find is the increase comes from athletic trainer cost along with salary increase. But as you go throughout the years, we try to keep it as about as stable as possible to provide our student athletes with everything they need to perform, without really overly stressing the district of the needs that we have.
Do we have a choice on athletic trainers or no, not really? It's mandated they have to be there whole, because this is almost a 10% difference on this one. It's a significant difference. It's 42,000 requested more than the previous year.
So that's not all trainer.
Okay.
So in that is also salary increase. So we have over 61 coaches.
Okay.
Or we have 61 coaches. So each one of those stipends has now increased by the contract negotiated amount. So
those are cash outs.
Correct. Those, and that's negotiated. So as the years go on, those stipends are set.
And you have to stay competitive
in
with the other towns.
in our book.
So we had a lot of coaching stipends right in here.
Mhm.
And as you can see, they go up year by year.
Okay.
Yeah, so the salaries portion is kind of untouchable due to contractual negotiations. So the increase is what the contract says for all the programs, right? So, so the increase is there. And the only difference that we would see is if a position was removed or a partial position was removed. So we would see that in the count above. So if there's no changes to number of staff certified or non-certified, then those dollars are going to all be contractual. Mr. Holleran?
Thank you. Just on the new equipment, 25,300. I know nothing was appropriated last year, so obviously that number is going to be high, but can you roughly break down what the equipment is?
So, new equipment isn't our day-to-day operations. Those are larger, bigger requests. So within those, there was a baseball scoreboard, which at one point the lights are going to go off, and we're not going to be able to report the score any longer. So we did add that into, you could actually see what those cuts were. One is a scoreboard, and then the second piece is a golf cart that our athletic trainer uses to rotate from sites. We do have a very large complex, and because of the number of programs that we do operate, we could have at any day 8 or 9 events going on, across the course. So our trainer uses his golf cart to kind of go from A to B to treat, the different sites. As of now, the golf cart has been working and the scoreboard at the baseball facility has been working, but they are old items. So there may come a day when they no longer work. But the golf cart is kind of a non-negotiable, because the trainer does need the ability to kind of get to A to B pretty quickly. So again, right now it is working. So, we'll hope, keep our fingers crossed at that. But we would like to just keep those items in there because they're coming up. And hopefully, later than sooner, I guess, in this case.
How much is the golf cart out of that 25,000?
I believe they will range from 6,000 to 8,000, depending on what we're looking for. Ideally, we would have a carted seat in the back for any injured student athlete that we'd be able to transport. A present base golf cart would probably be anywhere around $6,000.
Is there a reason why the golf cart wouldn't be in our capital, with the vehicles?
That is a good question. Lou, have we ever included golf carts under the vehicle line item?
No, we haven't. That doesn't make $15,000 anymore.
That's a good point.
Okay, that's the reason.
Listen,
We got a fancy one.
we can get a souped up golf
I
cart.
was gonna say, we get you tricked out, big time Tiger Woods edition golf cart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
air conditioning.
All right, go ahead, Ms.
This
Weaver.
is just where I would say, just in terms of budget stuff, we would love to appeal to the public. I know we had one of our scoreboards partner with a business donor, so would love to see if we could maybe have that consideration again, just a plea to the public, not in our budget. Or work with, our lovely golf course across the way. If Indian Hill has some extra golf carts that they would not like to use at this time, that would be great.
Yeah.
So just wanted to put that out there. If it can't make it our budget, we're happy to have the public help us.
Yeah, for sure.
But you would want one specifically made for your athletic trainer, right?
Ideally, yes. Ideally,
It's customized because of what they do.
it would just, there are definitely some upgrades that I think, for storage purposes, and transport purposes, there would definitely be some beneficial to having it catered to what our folks would like.
Miss Beatrice.
I have a quick question about the additional EMS coverage for the JV.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that there's EMS coverage for football. I don't see how much the additional allocation would be for the additional EMS coverage for the JV contest.
Here, we put it's $1,500 in the $599 contracted services section. And that was something that, again, prior to the year, there wasn't a fee for that. But again, as times come, we've been requested to pay that additional amount, which I think is very fair for the service.
$1,500.
Correct.
And does that cover also to the additional things that they're already covering? In other words, it's an additional $1,500 for JV, but are we paying $1,500 for the regular varsity football, another $1,500 for other sports? How is that?
No, so we don't need for any additional sports. This is just an add-on for
just football.
Just football JV. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
Just a question. Just a question on uniform. So it's lower this year. Is there a replacement cycle for the different sports and just happens to be a good year?
Yeah, it's so we have a pretty long cycle. We have a 5-year cycle. And so it all depends. Sometimes some years you'll get football or baseball or higher costing uniforms just for the nature of the sport. This year, offhand, I don't have all of it, but they are lower costing uniform cycles, which helps. Which just so that number will always vary. But we are strict to that cycle. So whatever sports are up in that 5-year period is what we're going to put in the budget for that particular year.
Any other questions for athletics? Okay. Thank you for coming out. Great to see you.
Thank you all.
So now we have Marilyn Giglioso online for the special education lines.
Hi, everybody. This is Marilyn. So sorry. I'm going to do my best to get through this, so I apologize. I'm going to direct you to your second purple tab in your budget books. And as Dr. Brummett has mentioned, there have been some incremental changes and increases in special ed over the last few years. But I think we've really encountered some steep increases this past year. And I know that we're going to have those obviously moving forward. I'll highlight for you during this presentation some of those increases. And I think one of the things to note is if you look on your left-hand pages, our population has increased. We're about 670 students. We're still waiting for our October 1st count from the state, but we're up almost 70 students just from 2019. But I am extremely proud of the program and services that we offer to our students and families within Newington. And we are continually striving and evolving our programs in order to meet the increasing needs of our students. And I think we do that through the recruitment and retention of some really amazing staff. And I know the question came up earlier about BCBAs, school psychologists, school social workers, though all of those PTs, OTs, all of those phenomenal individuals do fall under this department. And by adding all of those services and having all of those services in town have really allowed us to meet the needs of our students so that, as we said, we don't have to outplace as many students. And we've been able to really meet the needs in district. So I know that there is some significant changes within this budget, so I'll highlight a couple of those for you. Most notably are in our 300 line items, our purchase services. And just to give you some context, this line item reflects an increase in the total cost of evaluations. I think it was Anastasia, you were asking about the outside evaluations. So sometimes we do not have the capability to do those evaluations in-house. So we do have to contract out for those. And those evaluations have increased. There were some evaluations that we would have done that were around $2,000, $2,500 that have now increased to $5,000 per evaluation. So we've also increased our number of bilingual evaluations. We have had an increase in our population of students who English is not their primary language. And if there is a question as to whether or not they have a disability, we really need to find out if they have that same level of disability in their native language. So depending on how long they've been in the country, we may be obligated to do a bilingual evaluation, and the cost of those evaluations have also increased. As you can imagine, there are not a lot of bilingual evaluators out there. So that is 300. For our 400 line, you'll also see a significant increase. And just to highlight some of the changes in the 400 line, this encompasses our rental equipment and our purchased equipment. Dr. Brummett talked about this a little bit earlier as well. Our 504 students with IEPs who may have FM students, which are now all being upgraded to DMs. So there is assistive technology increases, and we know that technology just in general has increased. So there is, that is reflected in that line. Also included in this line item are assistive technology devices. We have students who are either acquiring hearing or reacquiring hearing. We have students who have undergone cochlear implants, and it is amazing to see their ability to be able to access their hearing now with a cochlear implant. And of course, their needs will change as they're getting more used to having that device and how that device can be used. So a lot of work is being done with teachers of the hearing impaired That has been an area that has increased. We do not right now have a teacher of the hearing impaired as one of our staff members, and that may be something that we look into in the future. We are looking at how many students currently fall under that hearing impaired disability, and we will do a cost analysis to see if maybe that might be a plans proposal for the future. But just for a comparison, that is something that, a service that was mainly on a consult was happening here and there. I think we had 2 students who were actually being seen by the teacher of the hearing impaired. I want to say we're maybe up to between 8 and 10. And that service right now is at about $360 an hour. And then, of course, I've already talked about technology and how those costs have increased. And then lastly, we'll talk about our line item 500, which is our purchase services. That line really incorporates a lot of our students who have paraprofessional support. We talked a little bit about how important our paraprofessionals are and how they help the students to access their education throughout the school day. And we were able to, not hire. I believe that you have all heard about our shortages in the area of paraprofessionals. And so when we do have those shortages and we can't meet the needs through our human capital development department, then we do have to contract out for those services. And now we're no longer spending $23,000 or $25,000 per year on a paraprofessional, but might be spending $35,000 to $45,000 per year on a paraprofessional. So we do have to account for that if that does happen. So there's been an increase in to reflect that as well. And then I believe that Dr. Brumman also mentioned at the beginning how our costs at the magnet schools, we incur costs for students above their tuition through their related services. So if they are getting paraprofessional education supports at this at magnet schools, if they're receiving speech language services or social work services, those costs are above and beyond. And those costs have increased. And again, just for a comparison, we were in 2019 to 2020, social work counseling hours were billed at $45 an hour, and they're currently being billed at $117.50 per hour. Special education teachers were billed at $48 per hour, and now they're being billed at $60 per hour. So some significant increases in that line item. And then there was I believe, a slight increase in our supplies, and those really are around protocols and testing materials, and just making sure that we have all the most up-to-date tests. We have had some requests for some tests that we don't usually do. The state has put out their recommendations for students with dyslexia. So we wanted to make sure that we have all of the tests available so that we are meeting all of the state requirements for that as well. Any questions?
Tony, go.
I think I got stunned at the $360 an hour. Who gets paid that?
Teacher of the hearing impaired. Now, the teacher themselves probably doesn't get paid that, but that's what we're being billed at.
Oh, I want to get one of those jobs. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to follow up on that, how many hours is that person in our district? Is it one or multiple teacher of the hearing impaired?
I believe that there's a couple of them. We primarily have one, and it all depends on what is determined at the student's PPT. So it might be 1 hour per week. It might be 1 hour per month. It might be, 6 hours per month. So it's all depending on, again, the different students have different needs. So it is what the PPT determines to be appropriate.
So you mentioned that in the future might be worth looking into hiring one in district. Is
Absolutely.
there, what we're expecting to pay next year versus hiring that person or a person full-time? Is there a difference there? Can you just maybe for next time, let us know maybe a cost difference of what we're anticipating budgeting for versus what it would cost to hire?
We can. Lou and I have been looking at it carefully with Marilena, and we're pretty darn close. That the break even might be just to hire a teacher of the hearing impaired with regard to these costs. So we are looking at that potentially for next year because we would just have to make a budget transfer from the contracted services to our salary line. But we're pretty much at that tipping point right now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Holleran and then Mr. Newton.
Under the 400 group for rentals, what school is 11? Is that Wallace? Just because I'm noticing a pretty significant request of 89,000. That's much higher than the other districts. Can we speak to that a little bit? Much higher than the other schools, I should say.
So I don't have that information in front of me. The only thing that I can maybe say is that at one time we had we have district programs, and though we currently don't have a district program at Martin Kellogg, I believe that there is a caseload of students who have higher needs at Martin Kellogg. So we can look into that for you, but I think that that's what it is. I think that there's a higher majority of those students who have, who are right now, I want to say that student with the cochlear implant that I was talking about, I know that student may be, at Martin Kellogg, there might be some other students who are in more of a specialized program who might have some services that are attached to them within that school catchment.
I think Lou might be able to shed a little light on that.
Specifically at John Wallace, there is a group, about 15 hearing impaired students across the whole district. 5 of them are at John Wallace, and one of them has a very expansive program that goes along with the equipment rentals. So that's why you have a concentration of costs there. And the way we're supposed to budget and account for things is where it is exactly happening the best we can. So we have a good handle on what's happening in this area, and that's why you have this variation across schools, because that's where the kids are.
Thank you. It just seemed like a big jump.
Curious, are any of these funds recoverable if they're choice students? Do we end up recovering it later down the road if we have a special ed kid who's a choice student?
Yes, any student that is choice that has a special ed designation, we get a 100% bill back to the community based on what their service arrangements are.
This is just the upfront cost. We don't know what that would be yet, right?
Right. Well, it's year by year. They reimburse us, not in totality. I am not aware of these students' designations. They're not on any of my lists that identify them as open choice. They're all, community students.
I was just going to add that because Wallace is so significantly higher than the other schools, I think we'll do a deeper dive for tomorrow night to make sure, just to tease out what that additional close to $70,000 higher than $60,000 to $70,000 higher than their counterparts.
More than half the total ask.
Correct. So I'd feel better about it too, just to peel away the onion and make sure we've accounted for that accurately.
Yep.
Go ahead, Lou.
Okay, let me just follow up on it. To give everybody an idea, the one kid that has the significant program, that package is valued at $58,000 for that one student alone. All the others get just a few $1,000s support to get it to the 77,000. So I'm not, sure there's, I don't know the details exactly of that student's program, but I know it has a significant component of working with a hearing impaired teacher. So I'd have to address specific questions about the kid, Marilena. But a lot of these, if you think we have $191,000 of expected expenses for hearing impaired support in this rental area, and it does include the teacher component that's there. One kid has a really big number, another one has a modest number, and all the others have little numbers. So there's, basically the rental and maybe a little bit of, professional support during the course of the year for them.
The one thing that I can share, one thing that the student that I think that we're talking about is a student who was at an outplacement. So there's a substantial cost savings by bringing the student back to district, but still requires a high level of need.
Thank you. Ms. Carr?
I apologize if I missed this, but under contracted services 599, section 30, which is administration, why are we going up 428,000 in this year?
One second on that. Yeah. Combination of two major items that are in here. One is our portion of the ESS program district-wide that is supported. And then there is a $302,000 allowance or account that is within that particular budgetary line item, which is for all of the contract services we have to spend when we can't hire somebody as an employee and we have to go outside to an agency to go get them. And we don't know where they're going to be needed. So they're in the general, program-wide, district-wide account being the 30 account. So those are the big items that are there.
You're saying 302,000 for increase in contracted services?
That's one
No,
item.
he's
that we
saying
have
of the
Right.
400,
Right.
302 is
And then
the
there's
contract.
300 something thousand for our portion of ESS. We have some
Yeah.
grant support where we don't have the whole thing covered with grants.
So
those
just
are the big-
confirming, the majority of the increase though is the increase in contracted services.
Yes, because
Yeah.
it's been a problem.
Yeah.
Not an opportunity. So,
Are there any, go ahead, Ms. Weaver.
Just going back to that, obviously I think it highlights maybe the drasticness of the lack of reimbursement money, but for this one student we're bringing back into placement, that still is not, it's considering the reimbursement of excess costs, but it's still that much that we have to account for.
Right, and that total would not exceed the threshold.
Yeah. Okay.
Just for some clarifications, and Marilyn, you listed them all off, but for next meeting, can we just have like a chart showing maybe cost increases of contracted services or some of the things that we were paying less for last year, the year before, and then this year, just it'll help us with that bigger picture of why this specific program is so significantly higher. Just a visual to help others understand as well. Are there any further questions? All right, we can move on to health and nurse services.
Okay, so you're going to go to your third yellow tab. And so I'm so glad that we did that one first because everything else I think is probably going to be pretty straightforward. So nursing services, I believe overall there is some increase from last year, but really in the areas of the 300, 500, and 600 and 800, we've maintained. And I think we've actually gone down in the supplies area. Just like with everything else, some supplies are on a cycle. So we may not need to rebuy some of those things. So overall, the budget has remained pretty much the same, except for the contracted salaries.
Any questions? Mr.
What was the
Newman?
reason for the 33% drop in supplies? The cost only, or it's about a
So
33% drop?
there's certain supplies that are on a rotating basis. So they might skip a year or 2 years and then have to come back up again. So in some trainings and that kind of thing. So I think that is what accounted for the drop.
It also says on that last page that an audit of current supplies indicated that less was needed this year.
Correct. We had purchased a lot through ESSER funds and the COVID funds and all of that. So we had an overabundance on some of the materials and supplies.
Less of a question, but more just clarification for the salary part of this, that I think majority of our nurses are in the AFSCME, that I know it indicates the multiple union ones, but is it true all our nurses are in that besides the hourly sub?
Yes, all the nurses, I believe, even the float nurse are in the union, just not anyone that comes in on a sub basis.
And that's the town's contract negotiation.
No, actually, we do this one.
We do this
This
one,
one we
right? This is
do.
what I-
They're on their own contract. It's called with UPSU. Is that correct, Steve? Anything you want to add?
Negotiations are upcoming.
That's what I was like, I know what year it is.
Right
That's
around the corner.
okay. That's just what I wanted to clarify. But that contract would not impact this budget, or it would.
Correct. We have to anticipate what we expect. So that is built.
That's what's built in. Yep.
And I
Baked
think
in a
Dr. Brown
4%.
Shared that in her original
Mhm.
presentation the other night that we made those for AFSCME as well.
Yep.
because they're-
No, I knew ASME was coming, but I was trying to remember this.
So it is built in.
Okay. Thank you.
Current trends, right?
Correct.
Okay, looks like we're good with that one. Moving on to psychological services.
Okay, so psych services. So same with psych services, pretty much have stayed the same, except for we did put in a plans proposal for an additional psych position. And I think it's just really important to highlight, you know, we talk about mental health, we talk about our students' needs, and school psychologists are the only employees who can perform the evaluations. Social workers, that is not in their purview. That's school counselors, it's not in their purview. So all of the new referrals, re-evals, the initial evaluations, those are all done by our school psychologists. And we are finding that, you know, with the 3-year re-evaluations, with the students staying on through the age of 22, they may be up for another reevaluation before they exit from us. So there has been an increased need for psychological services. We did put forth a plans proposal. We decided not to move forward with that for this year, but we did put in a buffer of $50,000 for other contracted services, so that in case we do need to hire a part-time evaluator to help us complete some of these evaluations, because again, our school psychologists are also responsible to do our evaluations at magnet schools, at the private parochial schools that we have in district, and at some of our private education schools where our students are outplaced. So they would need to be out of the building, they need to travel to go to those schools to perform those evaluations, and then they would have to come back and see kids that they were not able to see because they had to go out to complete those evaluations. So we do have that significant change in this budget for that $50,000.
Ms. Weaver?
All right, so are we not reimbursed for those evals? Like time travel and all that total cost? We aren't reimbursed for any of that?
If it's performed on a open choice student, yes.
Yes, but not magnet, parochial, private, like even if they're not our student, technically by
if there are magnet students are our students, they're just located elsewhere. Do we do a lot of parochial testing, Marilyn?
Yes, so even though students are not our students at parochial schools, so if we have a student from New Britain, Waterbury, who's attending Emmanuel Christian here in town, even though they're not our students because the school is in our town, we are obligated to do those evaluations.
And do not get reimbursed for those.
We do not get reimbursed for those.
Ooh. Not a fan of that.
No, we're not really sure who came up with that law, but if
Neither are we.
If you guys can figure it out and talk to them, that'd be awesome.
I would love to, yeah.
That law was passed that law was passed when I was a special ed director. Luckily, the place where I worked at the time did not have any parochial schools in town. So I was okay with it, but here in Newington, we do have parochial schools, or one. Thank you.
So, sorry, the student lives in New Britain or wherever and goes to school at Emmanuel Christian in Newington, so we still have to pay? Why doesn't New Britain cover?
Probably because the school's geographically in our town.
That's what the law determined, I want to say at least 15 years ago. And it's a little convoluted, but it is the law. Yes, state statute.
One of the unfunded mandates.
Exactly correct.
Okay, that confuses me. Go ahead, Ms. Weaver.
So just a follow-up on that too. Obviously trust your judgment on this, but I know is there I mean, I think it's up to deliberation of what your recommendation is, but would we anticipate that at some point, maybe in the year next year, I know it's hard to look out, that maybe the full-time position would be more cost beneficial than the contracted services of 50,000. I mean, I know it's obviously getting someone, benefits, all those other fun things, but just considering need, and we're gonna probably be spending at least half of it, is probably the anticipation. I would love to get your insight and analysis on that.
No, we actually looked at it. Originally, Marilyn had budgeted for $100,000 there. This year, we did a trial where we pulled a psychologist who's in one of our smaller schools to do some of this work 2 days a week at either some of the overflow at the high school as well as overflow elsewhere. And that seems to be going pretty well. So that's why we reduced this from 100 to 50. But we will be watching this carefully, especially at the high school, as well as any of these assessments that need to be done elsewhere. That's where some of our resources get stretched very thin.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is maybe a little up. Do we have a nutritionist anywhere in the school system? And go ahead, I'm sorry.
Our director of food and nutrition has that background.
Okay, I just want to tell you the reason. So I was listening to a Stanford University. She's Dr. Shabani Dali, and she's a metabolic psychiatric physician. And she was addressing obviously the explosion of mental disorders these days. And her studies are showing that many of them can be attributed to metabolic syndrome, which is basically inflammation, which starts in the gut. And she calls depression inflation in the brain. And she believes that nutrition, food, kind of influences mood, and nutrition, vitamins and minerals and things like that could be helpful. And so that's why I'm asking. I know we talk, we have psychiatrists and we have psychologists, and we seem to have to always increase those people because the mental disorders and mental problems are increasing. And we're not looking at why are they increasing. So that's why I was wondering about the nutritionists for the town.
That's a wonderful point, and I've certainly heard those reports, listened to them myself. We do have to serve food that's approved by the Food and Drug Administration and the federal guidelines, because that allows us to be reimbursed. The things that you're suggesting, though, are also impacted by diets from the home. So the thing that we would probably do with families is just counsel them about students eating. I'm sure that does come up in consultation with either the nurse or some of our mental health providers about good nutrition being a part of the package. But what we have control over is within government safety and health guidelines. The nutritional food group pyramid that now exists, we do abide by it.
I think we're putting Band-Aids on things, but thank you.
Any other questions for this program? Okay, and speech and hearing services, your last one.
And this will be your third purple tab, I believe.
Yep.
Speech and hearing.
And then really what we're looking at is our a large increase in our supplies. And again, if you look at the corresponding pages, there are new tests that are being released. So we want to make sure that we have all of the newest test protocols and tests available so that we, again, are making sure that we're testing all of our students with the most up-to-date and sound protocols and evaluations that are available to our professionals. And then there's some increased cost for assistive technology for the hearing as well.
Are there any questions here? What was the dues and membership? Last year was $700. This year is nothing. Is that something that we just don't need?
It was the way that it was purchased. It was purchased at the beginning of the school year, so it will it was purchased at the end of the school year, so it won't need to be issued until the end of the next school year. But it was something that we had, I believe that we had covered under a might have been covered by a grant last year.
Okay, thank you. No questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Okay, our next program is World Languages with Kristen Freeman.
Good evening, everybody. World Language is your first purple tab in your budget notebook. Our World Language program serves students in grades 8 through 12, and the goal of the World Language program is to support students in becoming proficient in communication in a second language that is not English. The current languages that we offer are Spanish, Italian, and French, and we also offer Latin. We are able to offer a high school credit for our students in 8th grade. So prior to coming to Newington High School, most of our students arrive already having 1 credit of world language under their belt. We have 2 new courses in the World Language Department this year. One is a survey of Hispanic literature. Very interesting course because it lives in both the World Language Department and the students read Hispanic American literature that is written in Spanish. And in the course in the English department, they read the same exact literature, but it is in English. So it operates on one curriculum, 2 different teachers that collaborate. So it's a really neat concept to support our students and especially the diversity of students. The second new course that we have in the World Language program is Portuguese for native speakers. Portuguese is our second most common language that is not English that is spoken at Newington High School. So this course offers an opportunity for our native Portuguese speakers to learn about their heritage in their native language to support them in maintaining those skills in Portuguese in their native language. If you look at the program detail, you will see that there is not a significant increase in supplies or in media. Some of the increase you're going to see is just because some of the materials last year were purchased with realized savings. Dr. Brummett mentioned that at the beginning of the budget discussion, but there is an increase to support some supplies for readers in the classical languages. So there are some digital platforms now that the world language teachers can access. And again, that it's to support literacy in those languages. If I have the floor, I have to put in one plug just for program needs, and that would be to expand. It happens every year. That is to expand the world language program down into the 7th grade. We are able to offer a full credit of world language only in Spanish to our current 8th graders. The best practice in supporting students and really becoming, I think it's like novice, intermediate, that really means that you have reached sort of your proficiency level of year 1 is to do world language in 7th and 8th grade. And then in year 2, we find them to be most successful when they're freshmen. So right now we kind of pack it in a year, but we are finding that with that decreased instructional time, our students, when they get to year 2 in Spanish, are not at the level of proficiency that we would hope them to be.
What would the cost be to have that?
That would be whatever the cost is of 4 full-time teachers.
What is a like town to us, say?
Mr. Noon, your mic's not on.
First time. What is a like town to us? Do they start at a younger age? Are we behind the gauntlet there?
Yep, we've
'Cause I
had
remember I'm a
Mrs.
West Hartford
Yep.
kid. We did it in 3rd grade. so I
Mrs.
won't go
Mrs.
there.
Vassal, who is the world language coordinator, has done a couple of presentations for both the full board and the curriculum committee. And if you look within our DORG, the common practice is that world language starts minimally in 7th grade. There are some other programs that start at an elementary level. If you want to give us even more teachers to do that, just like Mr. Korn would make use of counselors, it is. Yep. Mhm.
Go ahead, Ms. Weaver.
I would just add, I think it's just us and Shelton in our DIRG. We are one of 2 in our DIRG to not have it.
In 7th
In
grade.
7th grade, yeah. So we are in it's not majority. It's like the literal minority of schools in our districts to not have that. And then just a question. Why do we have 12.6 certified staff? Just curious if it's like.
We have, there is a part-time world language teacher at the high school.
Okay. And just with the new classes, that's fine for coverage. We're not adding staff, obviously, but are there multiple offerings or multiple sections, so to speak, of the Portuguese or?
So right now, this year, first year running, we did 1 section of Portuguese for native speakers and 1 section of the Hispanic literature class. It's the same teacher teaching them. So
Okay.
schedule wise, we do them back to back,
Perfect.
semester 1 and semester 2.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other world language questions? Okay. Music.
I'm going to direct you to the first lavender tab. So this is a color test to know the difference between purple and lavender. Lavender is a lighter shade of purple. Our music program aims to promote and improve student musicianship, as well as to promote cultural, societal, and aesthetic values through music. And this is a K-12 program. If you look at both your left-hand and right-hand pages, you'll see that the vast majority of the budget asks here are in the instructional supplies to support the current program. There is a slight bump in ask for supplies because recorders are now needed to implement part of the elementary program. I know I just saw the looks of faces of some parents when you heard the word recorder. I don't make those decisions.
Don't we
It's
already
in the curriculum.
Don't we already do that?
We do. We need to now purchase the recorders. I don't know what, do you know what they were doing before, Wendy?
Yes, we used to
Parent
pass the
paid.
cost on and now they are including the budget as of, I think last year is when that decision was made. This is the second year.
I have a fourth grader I paid last year. So that makes sense. This year they don't have to pay. Okay. Okay.
You will see a slight increase in supplies, and most of that is because we had supplies last year that we were able to purchase with realized savings. Again, referring back to what Dr. Brummett shared at the beginning. And there are some asks. Some of the cuts that seem to happen year after year are asks for larger instruments. Tubas, trombones, saxophones are the ones that generally come up. And unfortunately, in just the atmosphere of the budget right now, we have not been able to support those purchases.
Just like questioning, I wonder, is there any like programs? I know we oftentimes will use some for summer music and those kinds of things, but are there any programs of like instrument recycling, so to speak, that we could almost like a shared service with other districts or other things where we source our music materials from? Just curious, because I know like there are some like local music shops or other things that we could partner with. That have we ever reached out as a school district saying, please take pity on our budget?
So a lot of the instruments right now are maintained by the music department. Our students, when they are in their earlier years in elementary and in early middle school, often use instruments that are supplied by the school. Those are maintained by our music directors. I think that obviously if there was a donation to be made for those larger instruments, I don't think that anybody would say no to those, but in terms of us having a formal program around that, no, we don't.
Yeah, I was just curious where we like source them from. Is there a market where it's like it has to be, we have to get them from a Connecticut State Department approved vendor, or how we just source them? Is there music for
no,
cheap
we
on
don't.
eBay?
No, there's no standards, except there's definitely a difference in quality of instruments that you would have
Right.
your maybe third or fourth grader who's learning how to play flute versus the flautist who is in the wind ensemble as a junior or senior. There's a distinct difference in the quality of a sound production.
Oh,
of those
absolutely.
instruments.
My question of just if there are places that we can source, if we have like a vendor list that we compete with other schools for, you contract out to bid for other things. If there was that existed for music instruments, was just curious if there's.
To the best of my knowledge, no. Your most common instrument supplier is going to be Yamaha.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Petros?
Another question about the instruments. I seem to remember with my kids, we had the option to either take care of it on our own or to rent from the school. Is that rental program still in place, or are we making them available to all kids?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on to wellness.
Wellness should be the next tab. It's the first brown tab in your budget book. Our wellness program supports students in mastering skills of the portrait of a graduate, but specifically through the areas of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual wellness. Wellness encompasses two primary programs. One of those is physical education. So that is where our teachers are supporting students with developing motor skills, but also in concepts around teamwork, sportsmanship, games. They work in cooperative games and also in competitive games. The second part of the wellness program is the health program. And in the health program, if I were to say that the primary focus is number one on decision making, that is our aim in the wellness program, is to support students in being able to make positive decisions for their well-being. And I would say the second primary goal is in self-advocacy. Professional learning needs for wellness teachers is probably one of the areas that seems to change by the minute if you think about the various health issues that faced our students. and how those change rapidly, especially when we look at substance abuse and the types of substances, unfortunately, that are available to children. The primary asks in the wellness budget are going to be for the supplies in the physical education arena. So those would be any kinds of supplies for those cooperative and competitive games.
Ms. Weaver?
I'm just curious if you could get, I noticed in our program needs for current or future that's not in our budget. If anyone has just like a breakdown of that, that would be helpful. I see like there's a linked Google Excel kind of file of equipment inventory and that kind of stuff. I'm just curious kind of, obviously as we go in for future budgets, what that would look like for a cost estimate.
Yeah, I believe that Mr. Giacomowitz maintains that inventory for the phase out. Is that correct? Yes.
It's the equipment at the high school.
Right. Yeah.
We have about 25 pieces at high school.
Yeah.
And around 10 at each middle schools. We've been repetitively doing 2 to 3 pieces. Primarily high schools. Ones we have, the middle schools are still to replace that. In need of being, we chip away at it for the left chance. All the critical ones have already been taken care of. So, well positioned.
Yeah, no worries. Just always like to see what we're cutting. So if you have those cost estimates for like everything, that would be helpful.
Okay. Science.
The science program is maintaining its asks mostly in the areas of instructional supplies. The goal of our science program is to support students in not only developing concepts in the 3 primary areas of science, life science, earth and space science, and physical science. Sorry, I forgot one for a second there. But also to help students really think like scientists. So to understand science and engineering practices, be able to make scientific arguments, and be able to use models in order to draw conclusions, but also to aid in their explanations. The primary asks in science, again, are in the instructional supplies. There is an increase this year in supplies because, again, of many supplies last year being purchased with realized savings. And you'll also see that there is an increase in contracted services. That primarily comes from Inner Orbit. Inner Orbit is a platform that teachers use in order to assess students, but also provide some instruction. It aligns with the updated science curriculum NGSS, and I think it runs on a 3-year renewal cycle. So this would be something that we won't see for 2 years, but then it's going to come up on the 3rd year when that subscription ends.
Could you just explain the ask originally from the program was 32 for those contracted services, and it was cut almost or more than in half. What's the significance of that cut?
The biggest cut was chemical waste disposal. So that sounds a little dangerous that we're cutting chemical waste disposal, so I'll explain. Best practice is that you have somebody come in every single year to manage that waste disposal. It can be managed if you store your waste safely, which our teachers do. And as long as we do it every 3 years, it's just the ask is going to be a little bit more. Ideally, it would happen every year, but it's not a necessity.
So you're talking.
Yep. So you can store the hazardous waste safely for sometimes up to 2 to 3 years. That is correct.
So just last year we didn't appropriate anything for the waste. So we're on this will be our third year.
Right, so we'll reach a point where it can't be cut. So it will become, so Miss Spiller, who's the coordinator of science, instead of her putting it in as like a 2B, which is sort of it'd be really nice to have, eventually it'll come into the budget as a priority, as a 1A. And so it'll be asked, like, we're at a tipping point. We can't continue to store the waste, and it needs to be disposed of by a professional company.
Is there ever a health risk to the students holding stuff that's wrong, teachers?
No, not if it's stored properly. And there's a chemical hygiene specialist at Newington High School that is fully certified in how to do this and adheres to all OSHA regulations around making sure that all of that waste is maintained safely.
Ms. Weaver?
I just got to ask about IXL, our favorite fund. I'm just curious if it's, I know this is coming from past budgets, is partially covered in this and then partially covered in math, or is it? Okay.
Yep. We use IXL in math, English language arts, science, and social studies. So the subscriptions are not run in every single grade in every single subject. But we do order one subscription for the whole district, or it is because that's what saves us money. When you see it represented in the budget, this is the ask that would be about how much is just going to serve students in science.
So just directing for members who weren't here in budget previously, it's going to be in multiple line items, but yeah.
And then when you see it come in math and ELA, you'll see the number is higher because of the number of grades that IXL serves in those subject areas.
Thank you for that lovely
You're welcome.
clarification.
Any further questions for science? Okay, STEM.
We're moving on to STEM, which is the second yellow tab. The STEM program is a combination of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Our STEM program in Newington Public Schools began with the current exploratory program that we have in grades 5 through 8 in both of our middle schools. Since then, we are very proud to host 2 STEM academies beginning in the middle school at Martin Kellogg, the Biomedical Academy, and at John Wallace, the Aerospace Academy. Both of those academies continue through to the high school. They are staffed and actually very popular. And so those are also represented, excuse me, in this budget as well. The majority of the asks come in here, again, from instructional supplies, just like they did in the science budget. There is an increase in repairs, and that is for the maintenance of the flight simulators that are at John Wallace Middle School. You are also going to see an increase in contracted services, and that is for a program called Paxton Patterson. It is a 5-year subscription. So if we fund it this year, you won't see it again for another 5 years. That program serves the biomedical students at the high school. It is a web-based platform in which students can explore various careers that are offered in the biomedical realm.
It is also used at the middle school.
Thank you.
My daughter loves it.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that she loves it too. It's more important.
Are there any questions for STEM? Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, Ms. Weaver.
Just wanted to put up the replacement plan for the 3 printers. So that's going to hit next year's budget. Is that what I'm understanding?
I'm sorry, Ms. Weaver, the replacement plan for what?
The program, under the program needs, just for current or future. Just curious, coming up next year, do you just, if you could get an estimate on that too, just so we know, kind of thing.
Sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
They're not cheap. That's my estimate right now, but I can get you more details. That would be clever if we could.
All right, moving on to social studies.
Social studies too supports students in K through 12. Our ultimate goal in social studies is to support students to learn how to be contributing members to their society as both local citizens, but also as global citizens. There are various supplies that you'll find in the social studies budget. The vast majority of those are around historical fiction and informational texts. IXL will also appear too. That is a platform that is used to support student learning in the area of social studies. And you'll also see some increases in supplies and in professional learning. There is a additional statute that goes into effect the next year around the inclusion of Native American studies in social studies. So the statute does not say that we have to have a separate course that is offered that is specific to Native American studies, but the statute indicates that we need to make sure that Native American studies is included minimally in our current curriculum. Our social studies coordinator, Luz Antonio, was actually just awarded a small grant through the Mohegan tribe, and that grant will offer her and some of her teachers some pre-professional learning to support the development of that curriculum and also the implementation of the curriculum. But that's also noted again in a slight increase in the social studies budget.
Do you say that's going into effect this upcoming year?
Yes.
For that, okay.
Mhm.
Very cool.
Could you just expand upon the program needs? Just curious with the electives and the lower class sizes and the core courses. Just if you could shed light on that. And I know there were some fun new ones, the contemporary issues in sports.
So there's been a few plans proposals over the past probably 3 or 4 years of adding social studies teachers both at the high school and also at the middle level. And those plans proposals have not been funded. So I think that program improvement has probably been in the budget page, maybe as long as I have been presenting on the social studies budget. Some of the classes are large, and obviously additional staffing would support a decrease in those sizes.
Okay, and it's just noted additional staff for grades 6 and 7 in the middle schools is what the focus would be. Is that correct?
For the middle schools, so this is where the answer is it's complicated. Our middle school teachers are often certified in a subject like math, language arts, or science, and also social studies. So in a dream world, we have a social studies department in the middle school. So we would have 2 teachers at every grade level that were dedicated only for the teaching of social studies so that they could really concentrate their planning and instruction in those areas. So I think that's why those grades and specifically have been identified.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, the next one is English learners.
English learners is the third pink tab. I'm going to be referring to the program as multilingual learners. It is language that we adopted a couple of years ago, and now the state actually says it is a mandate that is a term that we use. So we are not, I'm sorry?
So we have to change our books.
That's a question for Mr. Giacomo. It's and Mrs. Sierra. But just at the table, I'd like to honor the vocabulary of using multilingual learners. It is just more of a strength-based mindset. We actually really value the diversity of languages that we have at Newington High School, and that comes out sometimes in our seal of biliteracy. We often think of our seal of biliteracy as something that is prestigious, that is earned by our native English speakers who develop proficiency in a second language that we offer at Newington High School. But we also have a small handful of students who arrive here in Newington with no English speaking skills at all, and they develop such a high level of proficiency in English and maintain their proficiency in their native language that they have also been able to earn that seal. In the program for multilingual learners, the purpose of the program is to support the language development acquisition in English, and that is in reading, in writing, in speaking, and listening. The vast majority of the ask for that program is in instructional supplies. Some of those are carried in the 600 account. I know that one of the increases that you'll see, I think, is in the 500 account. We've had a significant increase in the number of newcomers into Newington Public Schools. So we use both Lexia and Imagine Learning as platforms for students to learn basic English. So most of you are probably familiar with Rosetta Stone, which is a platform that is kind of available to adults. You can think of Imagine Learning and Lexia as being the equivalent for our elementary students and our secondary students. They're just more geared toward a K-12 student. So that is where we're seeing that increase, is because we have an increased number of newcomers to the school district. Just one more thing I would add is this is our first year of a bilingual program at Newington High School. And as Dr. Bremet already shared, we will have a bilingual program at John Patterson next year as well, based on the number of Spanish-speaking students from the October 1st enrollment report.
Just for clarification here, the Lexia is actually listed under 599 in the contracted services on the last page, but in the budget, it's on CS 616. So just maybe on the wrong line, miscoded, and I'm not sure.
Oh, thank you. I see that. I thank you. I know how that happened. I appreciate you pointing out the error and fix that.
And so is that a like per student cost then? Or is it a subscription for?
So we buy subscriptions usually by the tens. We can buy them individually. We used to only get 10 licenses a year, and we would maybe use 8 licenses. We since then need to purchase about 30 licenses, and then sometimes I'll need to go in and supplement the purchase of some of those licenses from some of the Title III grants.
Ms. Weaver?
Sorry if I misheard about the certified salaries. I'm just curious. There's no change in the amount of certified positions, so just curious how we went from 7. No, that's not.
Oh,
that's academic support. We add 1, but for the certified staff, still staying at 7, but 1 goes from, I think, one of the elementaries to, it decreases at the elementary, and then there's just like a more, then it's 0 to 120 at Kellogg. So just curious.
If I'm not mistaken, and Lou will tell me if I am, we had been funding part of those salaries through the ESSER grant.
Okay, this is
That was an area that we looked, given the significant rise in population of multilingual learners. Those are now becoming part of the operating budget. So that's why those are showing up there.
Okay, so the one at the middle school, 0 to 120 is the jump.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
okay. Any other questions for multilingual learners? All right. What was your last one? Congratulations. Thank you. All right, just a quick time check. So we're 2.5 hours in. We can definitely move on to the next subject area. I think so. Okay. So Wendy, you're up with English language arts.
Okay, good evening and again, everybody. We're going to flip right back to the beginning and go to the first red tab. English language arts instruction includes the areas of reading, writing, listening, speaking, and viewing. And you'll see for the most part, while there's some slight ups and downs in the asks, it's pretty flat. One of the differences you'll see under the program improvements is under contracted services. We've added a subscription for, looks funny on this paper, but it's actually Turn It In, 3 words, turn it in. Which is actually a pretty neat subscription. It's an interactive means where students learn how to apply citation and referencing techniques. But beyond that, the teacher is able to provide in-time feedback to students. There's actually a draft feature where they can get in time as they're writing. And then when it's submitted at the end, the teacher can apply rubrics and assessment strategies right in the program. Bonus, not why we purchased it, but a bonus to it is there is a way to identify student use of artificial intelligence. So when you look across, I heard Craig's reaction over there. So it's like, what was that? When you look across the other areas, you'll see there's actually some decreases. No need for any textbooks this year that we had last year. Slight increase in workbooks, but not very much. Otherwise, a pretty flat program. And then you'll see at the end that there are some grant allocations where we do some program splits in this area.
Sorry, Wendy, which one was it high school? We did one by attrition for reduction in certified? Was it? It's not.
That was a coach.
So just curious, because I think it's the reduction though, and on the, sorry, it's on 11. So is that middle school? We reduced the one? Yeah.
Yeah, that looks to me, because that's down just a little bit, and that could be the elementary teacher numbers changing because they're split across the
Right, so
five
it's,
core areas.
yeah. So the actual certified staff reduction is at elementary, we think?
One at elementary and one at middle.
Okay.
Mr. Halloran?
Could you just explain to me the significant difference in the sport salaries? Yeah, it's about half of what was appropriated last budget.
In fact, that's an allocation for what we call positions learning tutors. And we have not been successful at staffing those the last 3 years. And essentially, we've redirected a good portion of those dollars to support the special ed needs for paraprofessionals. And we just cut back the number of tutors we anticipate we can keep, because we're only at about half of our scheduled allotment in that area.
That would explain about half the difference in the budget. Thank you.
So just for clarification, there's 31 budgeted last year, this year, and then we're going to, for next year, cut that in half, because that's what is actually being filled right now. So
Correct.
currently, we're
It's
only.
15 or 16, I can't
That's correct.
remember.
Okay.
Yeah, no one's getting
No one's-
cut.
Yes.
And the money unfortunately has to be reallocated to the paraprofessional line to cover those contracted services. So kind of a robbing Peter to pay Paul strategy.
Just curious that I just want to clarify that it's maybe not driven by, is it driven by need or by the market that we're not being able to retain? Maybe both.
No. Competitiveness of our salary scale for starters and no benefit package. So I know historically, and Steve will have to correct me if I'm speaking incorrectly, is that a number of the individuals who took learning tutors jobs were individuals who were teacher certified who did not get a job for the start of school, but they put in a year as a learning tutor, maybe 2 years, and all of a sudden their career starts flourishing in Newington. So it was really the on-ramp to professional teaching opportunities for a number of those who were just below the cut line when it was a much more competitive market. Now, everybody gets a job, it seems. So there's not a lot of, there's plenty of opportunities, but not a lot of individuals looking to do this because they're able to get an offer in other districts.
So I guess what I'm saying is we could potentially need more tutors.
Sure,
the
our
market-
principals would argue they were certainly nice to have in classrooms, so that has diminished over the last several years. Concurrently, we've had to try to get more paraprofessionals for increasing special ed needs, so that's been the trade-off.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions for ELA?
Okay, we're going to go to the first pink tab that says mathematics. And again, here you'll see pretty flat asks. There are a couple of program improvements. One of them is a slight increase in supplies you'll see to support initial implementation of what's called Building Thinking Classroom. Some of you have heard about that around the board table in the last few months. This is an approach to teaching mathematics that really actively involves students in doing the thinking and conversing about math. So really it develops their conceptual understanding. Everything about it is designed to engage the student. So there are some supplies that are needed. It's like easels and chart paper. There's a lot of activity in the classroom. And I think we talked about the AP pre-calc inclusion last week at the meeting, so you've heard about that. Any questions about the math?
The discontinued use of subscription, was that Desmos?
That was
Or is
actually
that- no,
a
that's
subscription we were using in some of the kindergarten classrooms called Happy Numbers.
Happy numbers.
It's not happy anymore, so.
Did not work.
So what happens is with we have a new math curriculum as of last year at the elementary level, and some of those types of activities are included in what we have, so that there was no longer a need to do something separate.
Okay. So redundant. Okay.
We're still happy in kindergarten.
Math is great. Okay, seems pretty straightforward. Any other questions?
Okay. All right, we're going to go to the second green tab for reading. The major goal of this curriculum area is to provide instruction specifically in the 5 core areas of reading that we've talked about. They're aligned to the science of reading. You'll see phonemic awareness, phonics, decoding, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. You'll also see in this program that we have coaching services included and reading intervention. So those staff members are included in this budget area. Some of the program improvements include additional decodable text that we've been looking at. We explored some different decodable texts, and as you know, it's very important that students see themselves in the text, so we have found some that are working very well for our students. And we're also exploring programs focused on vocabulary and comprehension. That's, if you recall, part of the waiver that the reading waiver that we did with the state. Those are areas that we have been asked to beef up in our curriculum, so we're exploring those areas now. And you might recall that we have a grant of $140,000 that will cover the costs of that initial exploration over the next year. And then looking ahead, you'll see that we do have some co-teaching exploration going on in the 512 classrooms, and they would be looking to expand that in the future. So you might see some asks coming up. The big thing that you'll see in increase asks is in contracted services in the 599 you'll look at that 30 account, and that is because we were just talking about Lexia. Lexia is a program we use as part of reading. We actually have it for our kindergarten students, given the wide range of reading abilities in kindergarten. And we use it for intervention across grades 1 through 4 as well. A little bit in the middle level, not as much for intervention, mostly from our special education program. And this was grant funded for the last several years. Ever since COVID, we were able to put it into an ESSER grant, and now with those grants going away, it's moving back into the operating budget, so that's the big increase. Any questions in the area of reading?
Just on the certified salaries for middle school, just like a significant change compared to the other ones. Is this ESSER previously covered? On the 10 and 11 line for 111.
Yeah, I don't know, Lou, do you know those increases, whether they're,
I think it's the Title I change for, one of the schools was, is no longer Title I.
yeah, that
So we
could
had to move
be,
it. How you were-
so the thing that happens with Title I every
Yeah.
year is different schools are eligible, so sometimes
Okay.
we're covering something in the Title I grant that then moves out of it. I have to go back and look and
I,
see exactly
to me,
which
it looks like it
salary
was like a
is.
grant funded and then,
Yeah, and that
it's
would make
not.
sense because the thing that comes out of the reading budget at the middle level is the interventionist.
okay. And then which one are we reducing? Because I know we go from 43.78 to 42.41. I just couldn't recall what we reduced by.
Again, I think that's
What's
like the
interven-
last one where because the middle school and elementary teachers are split across all 5
Mhm.
core areas. So that reduction of that one staff member is you're gonna see little bits of it across all 5
Across them.
areas.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're reducing at the actual position is the split across the elementary or?
Yes,
It's
there
the
was
middle?
one because, and I think this one is the elementary one because I don't think the middle school comes out of reading, does it?
No, it's elementary.
But yeah.
The reading, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we'll
Yeah.
see it across,
Yeah, you'll see it
maybe
across the
is,
core
yeah,
areas.
okay, that's what I'm.
You might not know, but you said $140,000 was forthcoming from the federal government, maybe in the future. Does that come with mandates on what we're supposed to read? Because that's never usually a good thing.
Absolutely. And yes, yes, in reverse response. Yes, so this grant is specific to support from the state to look at the required programs, and they have come out with a list of approved programs that we have to select from. So we are going into that process now. Yeah.
What kind of say do we have in that?
Well, Dr. Brummett is fighting the good fight. She's on a committee, so she can speak best to that.
I could go on for hours, but I still contend that there's been mistakes made in the reading waiver process. I don't think they should be able to mandate local programs. That should be the purview of the Board of Education and our curriculum department. So I am still working with state legislators as well as my organizations to try to turn that around a little bit.
So if the legislation is unsuccessful at changing, then not this year because we have our waiver, but next budget, we would have to buy a new program, which may or
Potentially.
may not fit our needs.
Right. Anything not covered by the Right to Read grant, which comes as Wendy accurately stated, with a lot of, things that you have to adhere to, like training and such. But yes, if nothing were to change and all other efforts fail, there would need to be some probably additional reading purchases next year. But we are in good shape and in compliance for the upcoming school year.
Okay, any other questions for reading?
Okay, we're going to move on to curriculum and assessment, and that is your third light purple tab, kind of at the bottom of the book. The goals of this program are really to ensure that we have a well-articulated written curriculum across all schools and across all subject areas. So you'll see in here ask for supplies related to curriculum writing. The other thing that you see in here, a goal of the program is to monitor and assess the growth of individual students. So this is where we house our contracted services of where we have Power School, we have our Edgenuity licenses in here where we're meeting the needs of students. And there's a slight increase now, and one of the changes, aside from the increased cost, is that we have added CT SEDS, which is the new program that allows us to view the IEP of our students with special education needs. Used to be in IEP Direct, and now it's in what's called CT SEDS. So now they have an add-on to Power School so that people can view it. So we have to pay an additional cost in order to view the IEP connected to the students in Power School.
Yeah, is that a yearly increase now?
It will be a yearly cost.
Okay.
Yes. Otherwise, you'll see supplies are pretty stable.
Is this just more beneficial in terms of accessibility then for parents as well as
It's
us?
actually for staff. This is
Okay.
where staff have to view it, and so our special education teachers have to put everything in electronically through CT SEDS. They've been going through a lot of training this year on that change, and now this is the viewer so that we can actually see it on the Power School side.
Okay. And most schools are using this as well, or?
Yeah, it's a mandate.
Oh, it's a mandate. Okay. Yeah, great.
An unfunded mandate.
Unfunded. Okay, thank you. So we have to use this. Thank you.
You are correct.
Is that the full, like the difference is that is all CT SEDS?
No, there was also an increase in Power School and Edgenuity licenses.
Okay, so they all went up.
Yep.
But that was an additional.
Okay,
Thank you. All right.
And the very next tab, it's your third brown tab, is Media Library Services. This program covers all of our libraries across the 7 schools. And you'll see that the program improvements really have to do with enhancing their collections, which is an ongoing goal of the program to stay current. They're always looking through their books, weeding out dated books or ones that are worn. So they're always updating. You'll see a major cost in this program has to do with contracted services. That's a pretty flat ask. There's a little bit of additional cost to some of those, but that's where they have everything from Destiny, which is the program that we use for students to sign out books. And it keeps the whole inventory of the library. And then they also have subscriptions like online encyclopedias and things like that are all in those contracted services. And the other major costs are in the library books, and you can see that that's actually a decline. We did make some cuts in that area from the initial request from staff members. There is an addition, okay, somebody's going to ask, of a dues and membership, and that's really because we've added on CASL, which is the Connecticut Association of School Librarians. And that allows our librarians to have access, and those of you who were at the table last year, remember that they are some of the people who look at what the appropriate level of books are. So this is one of the services that's helpful in that, along with many other things.
And Anna Reynolds Library will be up and running next year. So are they, I think they've been like keeping along with book purchases and everything, just to make sure that they're going to have a full library for those students who haven't had it for 2 years.
That's right. I mean, you'll see that Reynolds is your 04 number. So when you look under library books, you'll see that they have double the amount of the other 3 elementary schools for that reason.
Thank you. All right, any other media questions? Yes, go ahead.
On the second to last page here, The appropriated 23-24 for library books under 10 was $4,500, and then it jumps to 2,300, $550.
Yeah, that's their initial request. That's what came to Dr. Brummett, and you can see that she then, if you go over to the next line, it's 13,000. That's what was cut at the building level, and then what they actually are represented in this budget is $4,000 from the superintendent.
Do we know why the request went up $19,000?
Yeah, I know that the middle schools have done a major weeding of their libraries, so they are probably looking to replenish the books that they have weeded out.
I think I was gonna say too, do you have the, what was the initial request ask maybe from last year too? Because I think they were like 19 at least, I want to say,
Yeah.
keep that in mind, yeah.
And that's why they're still asking. 'cause
Yeah,
we
okay,
didn't-
I
we
just
didn't
wanted
get
to
it
be
all
clear,
last
like
year
this
either,
is, yeah,
so
yeah.
We're plugging away at the replenishment.
Yep. But do we know, just for kind of public clarity, kind of any of our relationship with the public library in terms of book sharing or how they source their books, such as we do, and where we cost save there?
Yeah, we have a great relationship with the Lucy Robbins Wells Library. A lot of our teachers get books from there, especially when they're doing special projects, if they want multiple copies and things like that. It's their first go-to.
Is there any place too we could, like, I'm just curious where they source versus, our sourcing, and obviously they have probably less regulations or restrictions, and like less need for more copies or those kinds of things. Where do we source primarily for our books?
As far as purchasing goes,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how the public library, how their purchasing goes, and I don't know if we have any relationship with them on the actual
Okay.
purchasing. I'd have to look into
Just
that.
curious.
Okay, that was your.
The public library though cannot lend us books that are pre-screened, right? I'm just thinking out, I can see somebody out there now hearing this. Everything we get from them has to be screened, right?
Yeah, so that if a classroom teacher were taking out those books, it would be because it's an approved book to use in their curriculum. Yes.
Any further questions? Okay. We did not go. Yeah, okay. We'll let Mr. Farisi go and then we'll call it a night.
All right.
So.
Well, it's been called, it's been called light purple and it's been called lavender. So I will let you choose, but it is the second light purple lavender tab.
It has a purple hue.
It is grayish too. And it's continuing adult education. I thought it was gray as well, but then I heard some other colors and I questioned myself. So with that, I would like to share with you a little bit about the continuing adult education program. There are really two sides of the house to this program for our continuing adult education folks. So you have the side that's mandated, and those are adults who are 17 years or older who still need to get their GED. So they come to our program to get their GED, or they're citizens who are learning to speak English. So, we're helping support their English acquisition. Those are folks who are coming to the country for the first time, so they're looking to get their citizenship. And so those folks are mandated and have the opportunity to go through our program for free. And then there's the other side of the house, which we call the enrichment side of the house. That's what we offer as a town. So those would be fresh off the press, and it's going out tonight at Newington High School. We're having an orientation for our adult programs to start up. So you have things in here like opportunities for yoga or bird watching classes and a number of different things of interest for folks in the community and surrounding communities. And those are a pay or a fee-based structure. And the fee ranges. I will tell you that in general, we average less than $4,000 a year of collected revenue. So that would be just some note to have. So with all that said, that's kind of the program structure and details, the organization of it. Some things that are important to the program that we need to update and upgrade, which are annual, are the workbooks. Those are consumables, so we do need finances to purchase the workbooks. And as you can imagine, those go up annually. And also dues and memberships. So as you go to the kind of budget detail pages, what you're going to see is what we talked about before. Salary increases are contractual. You're going to see conferences have gone up a little bit. And the conferences are because we had to add multilingual services or folks to acquire English as their language staff. And due to that, we have to provide certain training for those staff. So they will go under the conferences. The workbooks have increased a little bit, just simply due to the enrollment as well as the increase in pricing annually of those workbooks. And the other increase you're going to see is in dues in membership. Because we are increasing in staffing, we are a part of the CAACE, which is the Connecticut Association of Adult and Continuing Education Association, and they have conferences that our staff have to attend, and membership, our staff need to be a member of that group while they're in the program. So because we are acquiring a few more staff, that increased the pricing right there. So those would just be the minimal increases that we're asking for to continue to run the adult education program.
We have a full-time security officer and a full-time secretary assigned to that program?
We do.
What are the?
The secretary is not full-time. I apologize. It's part-time. So they're actually staff out of my office.
Okay.
And they do that on a stipend basis.
Okay.
So they do all that work outside the work hours of their day here.
Okay.
They support the program.
Okay.
And Ms. Weaver?
Question, because I should know this, but we did workbooks last year.
I'm sorry?
Did we do we did workbooks last year, right?
Yeah, so some things we were able
The
to
grant.
account through either buy aheads or
Okay.
grant funding. So yes, we did workbooks last year.
Okay, I
as
was
well.
like, I know we did. Those come every year. And were we in our dues and memberships last year as well? Or does this new?
We did.
We did.
So you will see, I don't know, you have on your table a
Yeah.
new sheet. I don't know if you
Okay.
added the new one into your
Probably why.
your binder. I should have
That's-
led with that probably. The new sheet does show that
Yes,
there was
okay.
500, I think
Okay.
500, right?
Yes, yep.
And then it goes up to 900. And that
That's
would
the
be for the
change.
additional staff members and the increase in dues and fees. Of
Okay,
course, it goes up
perfect.
every year a little bit as well.
Okay.
So
Folks should replace this.
please replace that one with the new one that was on your table.
Yes.
Thank you, Karen, for printing out the new ones. Yeah.
And just one last thing was, I know every year, is it covered in here, the adult education graduation?
Is that the what? I'm sorry.
The graduation ceremony for adult, is that covered in here as well?
It is.
Okay,
It is embedded in. Yes.
thank you.
We do have a little bit out of my office's account that covers some of that too, but most of it is covered through here.
Can you just, there's a note of grant allocations on the whole page, and it says that we have a grant, but the funds go to the town, to the board. So, my mic's off. So just the grant funds of 90 to 100,000 go to the town of Newington, not the Board of Education, and the program overall cost, well, what the superintendent is asking for is 126. So it almost offsets, but that grant funding is going directly to the town.
Correct. So we have to assume all that in our operational budget.
Just for a
Why
point
doesn't it come to
of.
us?
Lou, Dr. Brummett?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. You have to,
If you don't.
just make sure you're recognized and then you can turn your mic on to ask the
I'm
question.
sorry. I'm just curious why this goes the way it goes. We don't get the money.
Since I've been working here, that's always
Speechless.
been a grant that's been paid for the benefit of the town. Their responsibility is to fund the adult education program to whatever level as part of the overall budget. So it's not one of those that's a direct grant support item for the board where the town has no involvement in it. I can't tell you why that's just the way it's always been. Yeah.
Similar to ECS, that goes straight to the town, even though it's meant to offset educational expenditures. So that's just the funding streams and how they're directed.
Ms. Weaver?
Just on that note, are there any other ones that we're missing that are technically, grants that go to the town, but are for educational purposes or given because of the education we're providing? Just think it might be helpful to put like a list together, even if it's just those two, just to say the amount that is, it's ultimately offset in the town operating budget. That is then the services we're providing may be a good way to just calculate that number.
If there is something that's very minor.
Right.
Every dollar counts.
Total for ECS and adult ed, just showing that that stream goes straight to the town.
Yeah. And any others if there are, but that's it then.
We will put our thinking caps on and make sure we're not missing one. We'll check. with
Or any
Janet as well.
federal that like would go to them, not that they would, but.
It did used to be a separate special ed grant and a separate
Yeah.
transportation grant. Those got folded into the ECS.
ECS, that's
15
correct.
years ago.
Yep. So that's all folded in, but that's a good point, Lou.
So the next program is Homebound. It's your second pink tab, a couple back from where you just were, forward toward the beginning of the book. Second pink tab, Homebound, K to 12. And this is a K to 12 program that I know was shared a little bit earlier on around the numbers of students who receive homebound servicing. So I think you started to see a little bit of why students receive homebound, servicing, and that's right up front in the program description. So homebound itself, though, and the cost and the way in which we educate students who are on homebound is through our contract negotiation process. So moving into this upcoming school year, we have renegotiated in the contract a new pay structure for homebound educators. It has been very difficult to get staff to take homebound jobs, but our students need it desperately, and so we want to make sure we can provide. So it required that we renegotiated with the Newington Teachers Association a different pay structure. So in this current school year, it's an hourly rate of pay at $40.40 an hour to work with a homebound student if you are a teacher. In the new pay structure that'll be enacted next year, it'll be $55 an hour for one student, $75 an hour if you're working with two students, and $85 an hour if you're working with three students. In addition, the coordination of all those students that Dr. Brummett shared with you earlier in the memo, and all those teachers that have to work with those students is enormous. So we do have a position called a homebound chair, which gets the $55 an hour rate. And that gentleman coordinates all of our homebound staff in the servicing required for those students. Manages all the scheduling of it and makes sure that in recruitment of teachers in the district to be able to manage the servicing that's required. So the cost that you see that's an increase here is simply just due to the increase of the price structure that we put out for the contract that will be implemented for next year.
Ms. Weaver?
Do you have like total number of hours of that, maybe for the school year, of how much we're doing for homebound?
Yeah, we do. We have a estimated amount of numbers. Right now, I think the budget is for around $135,000, and I think we're trending right now to end the year at around 130.
Okay.
With the current pay structure.
Got you.
Right. So we estimate, we didn't estimate, we use those numbers to manage for this year, and we use those to build out for next school year with this new pay structure, but we can look at that.
Yeah, and I know I ask every year, but like the variability of just the demand. I know we're seeing clearly other demands on just our in-school services needed, but obviously that can impact level of homebound services as well. Are we seeing still like an exponential increase, a more linear increase, or flat?
Of homebound servicing. The need is there weekly. We see our chair recruiting staff weekly for teachers to work with students. So the need is absolutely there. I see it come out from the high school.
Yeah, just like
week.
year over year, like pre-COVID, post-COVID, are we seeing more every year, you think, or? Yeah.
Yeah, post-COVID definitely, but I'd have to look at all the numbers to get back to you on that. But it even last year when we started flirting with this opportunity of needing someone to support it. It was
Right.
getting so enormous for our counselors to manage.
Yeah.
So if we talk about why the money going into here is supporting other students as well,
Mhm.
it's because this was a task that our school counselors that Seth presented on at the very beginning, who are very, right now, heavy on their caseload. They were also managing this. So this was a way to alleviate a burden from them so they could focus more on the students in school, and be able to help support this in a different way. So that way we could manage both without the need to put out, more staffing to you and ask for more staffing.
And just final, sorry, these are all Newington teachers doing homebound, or are we doing
Correct.
contracted services?
These are all
Yep.
Newington teachers right
Just to
now doing
clarify for
homebound.
folks.
On rare occasions, we might use CREC for open choice students who
Correct.
require homebound. And another kind of a postscript to that is our Nor'easter Academy that's in a pilot right now. Many of those students used to be homebound, but now they're coming for the academy. So that's sort of a different way that those resources are allocated. We'll keep, but all that, we're trending, we're watching very carefully.
You get reimbursed for it.
Absolutely, yes.
Just for those students that are in the new program, the teachers that are helping with that, is their pay based on this same schedule?
We tried to build a structure that's almost equivocal to this. Yep.
Okay, but it's
Mhm.
just falling into the core programs instead of in this one.
Actually, right now it's somewhat in here, and right now it's a pilot program, so it's not, but it's built more into here.
Okay, so next year, same thing, it would be built into this homebound.
That would be the plan.
Yes.
And can you just elaborate on the program needs for the future? The effective use of online learning? Would that look cost-wise significantly different, or what were you thinking with that?
Right. We still have the subscription fees, and we still have to have an educator, teacher, a certified teacher kind of oversee the program, but having the flexibility and the ability to capitalize and utilize that program does benefit us. Right now, we are using it in a blended way where some students are taking courses through the online program, but they're doing it while they're either here with us in the academy, or they're doing it with their homebound instructor, and the teacher's there to kind of support the instructional piece of it. Some online programs are excellent, and some still require that kind of personal tutorial to go along with it from an educator who really understands deeply the curriculum and the assessment structure that goes along with that curriculum. So it's a combination of it all. But we just want to always ensure that we have enough licensures to be able to do that and the ability to be able to implement it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, last one.
And lastly, if you could go to your fourth red tab. Staff development and evaluation. So one of the main functions of my office is to really focus on staff in coordination, especially with the curriculum office, to focus on staff development, but also the evaluation process and support that through all the building level administration as well, and for all staff. So we start all of this to begin even through the hiring process, the recruitment process, and really start to put our efforts there. So we recruit and we retain top quality educators, and then ensure that when they are on board here in the Newington Public Schools, that we have a strong professional learning program and a strong evaluation system that will support them to be the very best that they can be. So we're constantly just looking at how do we make the most out of our human capital, right? Because it's a human organization. We got to make sure that we do right by all of our staff. So with that in mind, I would kind of turn you over the attention to the detail. We continue to audit our recruitment and hiring processes. I know the board policy committee is, and you'll see this under one of the needs, the board policy committee will be looking at a workforce diversity policy that is new this year. And so that'll be one effort that kind of memorializes our efforts in that area. But equally, when we look at our asks and our needs for this program, what you'll see under the printing is we significantly reduced in the area of printing, and we're trying to manage everything we can do online. In the area of conferences and conference funds, we are asking for slightly more. We engage in a lot of professional learning here in the Newington Public Schools. The opportunity for our staff to acquire knowledge sometimes that we can't provide here in the district does come from outside resources such as conferences. And as of late, some of the learning that we've been doing is really shifting how we do business, how we practice, and that has required some additional resources from outside conference sources. So we want to make sure that we can continue that great work that's allowing us to achieve our vision and our mission here in the Newington Public Schools. So that would be the purpose for that ask. But you can see under contract services, we tried to come down a little bit there in a few other areas to try to balance out a little bit, even though the ultimate total ask does go up a little. In our professional materials, we reduced as well. So we knew that we needed a concentration in the conferences fund, and so we tried to reduce in some other areas to make up some of the differences. So with that being said, I'll pause right there and see if there are any questions.
Go ahead, Tony.
So I think the question I was gonna ask initially, so I don't do it at the end because everybody wants to leave. I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse or not, but because of the major goals, I'm thinking it may be. So in one of the slides last week, there was a chief of strategy, innovation, and culture for equity. And I realized it was a grant offset, but it's for $151,518. Can anybody tell me what the job description of that person is?
I can start and then Mr. Parisi or Ms. Kraus can assist. But that is an individual that is spearheading our equity efforts district-wide. He provides tremendous amounts of training and coaching to both our internal central office team and at the building level. He provides professional development. He's got a doctorate in this area of study, so he has tremendous depth of knowledge in the area of helping us to achieve equitable outcomes, and overarching issue is closing our opportunity gap. That's his charge, really, to assist us with that. I would ask either Steve or Ms. Kraus or Mr. Parisi to add to that, if they feel.
I would just add, just to give an example, is one of the things that this person started to do, joining us 3 years ago, is to assist with examining our infrastructure and helping us to see how we needed to realign it to accomplish what we wanted to do. So an example of that is we're looking at our discipline system we're seeing that there's gaps across schools because it's kind of been done at the building level. So now we're creating something district-wide, and he's helped with a structure for that. And that example came to my mind because that group met today. Very complex.
Is that a federal or state grant? It says it's,
That is paid for out of our open choice grant.
so is that a continuing thing or is that a 1 year?
That we will continue to get. It's part of the allocation we get for our number of students who attend school here. It's a portion of the money that we get back for those students.
Do we know who that person is? You said he's got a PhD.
Yes.
The word equity hasn't even been in our lexicon until the last 3 years. So someone with a PhD in that, I'm curious.
Yeah, do you mean the name of the individual or?
Yes, who is?
His name is
Where did
Dr.
he come from?
His name is Dr. Gerald Hairston, and he previously was with CREC. And then prior to that, he was with CERC. CREC is the Capital Regional Education Council. He was a consultant there. Prior to that, he was a consultant with CERC, State Education Resource Center. So that's his role has primarily been consulting for a number of years in this area of educational equity. He also has expertise in SRBI, which is our scientifically research-based intervention. So he consults with us on that or provides direction on that. So he got his doctorate in the same school I did, a little bit after me. But yeah, there's a lot of research that's been in evidence a long time about the need for educational equitable practices. Obviously, it's coming more into the forefront as our society becomes more diverse, that there is a lot of a broad and deep research base in equity.
Where would he be located?
He works out of our office, out of central office, but he goes to all the schools.
So is he ever available to the Board of Education?
Yes.
He's been here a couple times, actually. Or that.
Not this year.
No, you wouldn't have met him yet. No, you're correct about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would add too, like, if you look back, some of our policies, like 2001 is the latest one I was looking at that had equity in it. And it was last updated in 2001. So, I mean, it's not new, but he's come to present, I think, 2 or 3 times. And
At
then
least.
was speaking at convocation, I think.
Yes.
And is pretty visible in the district.
Yes, he provides a
But
lot of
maybe we-
training district-wide. He's leading the efforts on our discipline equity work. He's leading the efforts on some of our student voice initiatives. He works with students at the high school. So he has a myriad of responsibilities.
Maybe we put him on the agenda.
Does that salary 151,518 increase as the years go on, or how's that
The
work?
cost of living increase, and I believe, does that include benefits, or that's just
That includes partial benefits.
so he gets a cost of living increase every year. He's not in a union, so it's not a predictable cost increase, but
Thank you.
And just kind of circling back to my original question, the reason that position didn't come up is because it is a grant funded
it's
position.
actually always been 100% grant funded.
Started with ESSER.
Starting with ESSER, and then it was switched over when our open choice reimbursement went up. So we just kind of moved him to a different grant, but he's 100% grant funded since the inception.
Just wanted to go back to the budget real quick. Mr. Parisi, do you have a breakdown of the conferences? Maybe just estimated costs and then just some of the things you've done. I think you've presented on some of the.
Yeah, we've
things
done that in the
past.
past. I could
Yeah,
get that
if you just have-
prepared.
Thank
Try
you.
to bring that for tomorrow night.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
And
definitely.
maybe who attends the conferences, is it open to, I guess across the district, who it's open to?
Certainly. Thank you.
No other questions here? Okay.
Sorry, just one last thing on the, I know it's, just curious about the preschool census. You said that it's biennial kind of census. What do we yield with those results? Just eligibility or just kind of where the program's at?
Yeah, both eligibility as well as the number of students that we can anticipate coming in. So, yeah, we usually get almost all responses, but sometimes we don't.
Okay.
And, but
It's
we did,
just to the preschool current population though, not
correct.
perspective, so to
Correct.
speak, of demand for
Yep.
next year. Okay.
And we, and this year was the first year where we did it both by mail and online. So you could let us know online, which was great. Worked out
Thank you.
well.
Yes, that was very convenient. way
Good.
To fill out that. Fill that on the form, and I was like, I don't want to mail this, so I did it online.
Thank you.
Okay, so that concludes our overview for today. Mr. Giacomowitz will have to go tomorrow. So our next item on the agenda is public participation. If you are in the room or online, you are welcome to speak on any matter regarding board business. Raise your hand if you're online or come up. Seeing none, we can move on to remarks by board members. Mr. Holleran.
If there's no any further remarks, I'd like to move to adjourn.
We have further discussion. Hi, Ms. Weaver.
I just wanted to say that Mamma Mia tickets at the high school went on sale, so I encourage everyone to go get their tickets. And then I'll motion to adjourn.
All right, I'll second your motion then.
Discussion. I just want to say thank you to everyone. I know most of them have left us so far, but want to say thank you to everyone who presented tonight. Definitely good to get the overview of these programs and look forward to hearing more tomorrow. And we are virtual tomorrow due to incoming weather. So I'll see everybody online. Make sure to have your cameras on so we can be just like this, but virtually. And
All those in favor?
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.